Hello everyone, and welcome to what I believe is episode 17 of the Lookout Sir 40k podcast, a fabulous podcast produced by three friends where we talk about Warhammer 40,000 and Warhammer 40,000 related accessories. My name is Dan, and for those who have been listening to us on a semi-regular basis, you may be interested to know that we're mixing up the format a little bit here today. So what we're going to do in the initial instance is we're going to just sort of tell you what we're going to be talking about. Then we'll do the introductions of the other gents that are joining me to record this glorious podcast. And then we're going to get stuck into the news, followed by a couple of other little segments. So let's give that a go. So, as I say, for the first time ever, we're going to do a roundup of the news. This is our attempt to kind of summarise things that are going on, talk about all the different stuff that's happening in the hobby in the broader sense, and then just have a general kind of roundup of everything that's going on there. So we're going to kick off with the news. Then after that, we're going to have a roundup of my Grand Tournament Finals performance. For those of you who weren't already aware, I played in the Grand Tournament Finals, and I'm going to recount how I performed within it. And then to close us out, we're going to have something a little bit, unique and interesting. Our good buddy Richard is going to join us as we put together our first ever Lookout Sir quiz section, although not technically first ever. I suppose this would be as good a time as any to introduce you to my good buddy Phil.
Hello.
How do you think that went, Phil, as a general introduction? I almost feel like I didn't quite get the rhythm right. That's going to take some work, I imagine.
Is this you telling me you want to re-record it, or are you just commenting?
I'm just commenting. I'm going to let it roll. I'm going to, I think it's better that we just let it be what it is and then refine it over time. This is a process, a spiritual journey that we're on together. So, yeah. Although, if you tell me that it's absolutely terrible right now, I'll go back and re-record.
No, that's good.
There you go. There you go. I can always rely on you, Phil. No. You've done it now. Move on. And on the topic of people who can't quite move on, let's talk to Joe. How's it going, Joe?
Howdy doody.
I don't really necessarily feel like you can't move on, Joe. That would be a really, really unfair thing to say about you in the grand scheme of things. If anything, you move on too soon.
Oh, yeah, easily.
How many armies has it been this year so far? 2?
So, I've still got the Death Watch.
Yep.
They're going strong, because they're my army of the year, if that makes sense. The Minotaurs have gone. The fleeting breeze of a thought that they were. They came into my life, and then Black Legion turned up. So I pushed them off the metaphorical cliff, and just got Black Legion instead.
There you go. So to say that you linger or spend too much time or don't move on is not entirely fair, is it? If anything, as I say, you're too quick to move on. There's always a more attractive option waiting in the wings for old Joe.
Oh, definitely. Well, as an observation, I can't believe we're still when you do the intro. You were saying, "I believe it's this number episode." Like we're expecting it to collapse on itself like a flan at any moment.
Well, the reason I said that was more that I wasn't 100% sure what episode we were up to. I was fairly confident it was episode 17, so I just thought, you know what, I'll add a certain level of uncertainty to that just in case I need to go back and refer to the fact that I got it wrong. But I've just checked the pages, and genuinely is episode 17. It's hard to believe we got this far.
I'm amazed and happy. Our baby is growing up.
Do you feel a strong emotional connection to this as well, Phil?
I'm pretty happy that we've kept it going and we didn't just all give up after Christmas. Right, this is too much effort. Let's not bother.
It is definitely at times a bit too much effort. This afternoon, or this evening actually, so today is Wednesday the 27th of March 2019, and I've literally been home for a grand total of 17 minutes as I've come in and had to kind of run around putting shopping away and then get into the business of talking about Warhammer 40,000. So yeah, sometimes you could do without it, but
you've got your priorities, that's all. You've got your priorities, and Warhammer is up top.
It is, absolutely. It trumps all other things. I don't care about anything else more than this. But there you go. So yeah, that's us. That's the episode. Let's get on and talk about the news, shall we?
Get your ears ready, chaps, because it's time for the news!
Thanks very much to Phil for that wonderful transitional noise that we got there. I thought it was, very appropriate, Phil. Good work, mate. Good work. So with that all said, let's talk about the news. So in this week's news, now again, to preface the whole thing and sort of talk through stuff, we're recording this on the 27th of March 2019. The idea being that for the next episode, we'll talk about anything that takes place between the 28th and whenever it is we record that particular episode. So, just so you're aware, if there's something that happens on Thursday the 28th, we're not going to add it to this news section. We're just going to talk about it when it's appropriate to do so. Because we can't tailor everything to every situation. We're not staying up all night to see what happens at Adepticon, are we, lads?
No. And there's the UK Game Expo as well, isn't it?
Wow. Is that have we got double whammy this weekend?
Yeah.
Blimey.
Double.
So expect a lot of news next week, or not next week, next episode. But for now, let's talk about the first of the news topics, which is, of course, that today, not today, as I say, because obviously today for me is actually Wednesday, but for today for you, unless somehow I've given you some sort of early access to this episode, is Saturday. So today, new Chaos Space Marines of Vigilus comes out, which is pretty obvious, but pretty exciting. How do we all feel about the fact that new Chaos Space Marines is a thing, along with Vigilus?
Amazeballs.
Amazeballs. I hear Havoks are really good.
Havoks are, without swearing, like poo hot, you know? They are super duper good.
Isn't it weird that by not swearing you made it sound way worse? I feel like poo hot is way worse than the swearing alternative.
It just makes it sound dirty.
It does. It does. It takes on a completely different meaning, poo hot. But there you go.
Yeah, the new ability to move and shoot heavy weapons with no negative modifiers is crazy good.
It's almost like guard tanks should have that ability, don't you think, Phil?
Oh, that would be nice, wouldn't it? I'm going to say the Havoc model's actually out this weekend because they're not on.
No, they go on pre-order on Saturday.
So you're a whole week early.
Well, it's true, but everyone's talking about the Havoks. They're the things that people are like, they're dead good, them, because they've got these new 24-inch 8-shot guns, haven't they?
Yeah, the new rotor cannons.
There you go, the new rotor cannons, yeah. Although, to be fair, controversially, I think the autocannon's still the best option for that squad.
Potentially, it is the best all-rounder gun in that unit.
I don't think it's the best all-round gun. I think it's the best gun. Period. Autocannon, mate.
Well, I do think autocannons are sort of quite underused and underestimated, especially in the current meta. Most people look at them and be like, oh, whatever. They're only 2-shot.
So I kind of think the las cannon ones are the best.
Really?
So, yes, because there's a new detachment in the Vigilus book. Right?
Right.
New detachment. I can't remember if it's a command point. I think it's a stratagem within one of the new detachments. And basically, in the first turn, after your opponent moves all their stuff, your Havoc squads get to shoot for free out of sequence.
Oh, wow.
So, if you come up against a knight player, for instance, you go have 12 las cannons.
Ah, yeah, but at the same time, 24 autocannon shots. Eh?
No, because they still need 5s to wound against a knight.
Still pretty decent. Why has everything got to be a knight comparison to you? What does 12 las cannons do against a unit of Primaris Marines?
Kills them all.
It might not, though, will it? It might not.
If you are unlucky with your rolls, then it won't kill a whole unit, no.
Exactly. So if you assume... Sorry, I'm going to cough. If you assume that you get as many hits with the las cannon as you would the autocannon. So let's downplay the autocannon here. Let's say the autocannon's only got 12 shots. You get against a unit of Primaris Marines, you hit them on 3s. Immediately with the las cannon, you wound them on 2s, so I'll give you that. You're going to get probably a few more wounds out. But there's every chance that with that D6 damage, you're going to roll a 1 a couple times. And then that adds up to less overall, because every one of those autocannons is a guaranteed kill, Joe.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man. Against Shining Spears as well. Shining Spears don't want to get shot by autocannons. They want none of that business.
Yeah.
Well, I think the benefit of autocannons is it's only -1 AP, so they're not really bothered by invuln saves. Whereas a las cannon is completely nerfed by an invuln save.
Exactly.
And that's sort of the biggest problem with the meta at the moment.
The other thing as well, though, is you got to think, right? What's the movement of a Havok, do we know? Is it going to be 5 inches to compensate for this?
6 inches.
Oh, is it 6 inches?
Well, there's still space marines.
Yeah, but surely if they're going to move and shoot with no minus modifiers, there's got to be some downside to them, surely.
No.
All right, fine. Well, anyway.
I'm going to throw that in there. No.
Fine. But there's the point, you see. So then you've got a fret range of 54 inches. Come on now. That's good.
Yeah.
54-inch fret range? Oh, terrifying.
Well, in that case, then, what about missile launchers? Because missile launchers can shoot a solid shot or D6 shots each.
Yeah, but the D6 option is terrible. Not terrible, but not as good. And also, Joe.
I don't know, if you come up against an orc player and you get to roll 12 D6 shots against them.
Yeah, but missiles are more expensive as well. You got to remember these things. They're pricey. 10 points an autocannon. 10. I'm telling you, man. Autocannons, way to go. So is there anything else good in Chaos Space Marines that anyone wants to bring to the fore? Phil, what do you think might be good? Oh no, Joe, you're getting in there. Come on. What do you reckon?
Oh, God. There's a new HQ choice that's better than Abaddon.
What?
Yeah. There's a new Renegade Demon Prince.
Okay.
Who, so Demon Prince has 5 attacks, and you're giving them Malefic Talons, brings them up to 8.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's a Warlock trait or a Relic.
Uh-huh.
Basically, every 6 to hit generates another attack.
Right, okay.
Oh, it's a Warlord trait.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that stacks with Death to the Fourth Emperor.
Okay. So you get 2 for every 6.
You get 2 for every 6. But then there's a Relic or Stratagem that basically it's a combination of Relic, Stratagem, and Warlord trait. So when you attack in combat, every 6 that you hit with, you get Death to the False Emperor, and you get another attack on top. So you get twice as many hits on your 6s.
That's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, and then that stacks with another ability where for every 6 you get for Death to the False Emperor, generates an additional 3 hits.
Wow.
Instead of 1. So for every 6 you're getting 4 hits.
Mm-hmm.
And then you if you put prescience on that person, on that Demon Prince, gets +1 to hit, then those things are activating on 5s and 6s.
Crikey. You'd hate to fail a charge with this guy, wouldn't you?
Yeah. If you fail that charge, it would be useless.
Yeah, well, of course.
But with starting with 8 attacks hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s, with exploding 5s and 6s, each 5 and 6 that you roll gets you an additional 4 attacks, is horrifying.
Against a Imperial opponent as well, you have to caveat.
Against an Imperial opponent, because that's the only way Death to the False Emperor works.
Yep.
If you charge him into a unit of Primaris Marines,
oh yeah, kill him.
He's strength 6, and it's -2 damage. He'll be like, blah, you're all dead.
Yeah, but Abaddon will do that as well.
Well, I don't know, because if he rolls a 1 for Dracnian, he's a bit bonk.
Yeah, but you re-roll it, don't you?
You could roll a 2, and then he's got not that many attacks.
It's true, but it's still killable.
Yeah, I suppose.
Phil, anything you want to close on Chaos? Because, that seems...
Well, I was going to say Abaddon is a super lovely model, and it looks amazing.
The models in general within this Chaos release have been rather lovely, I suppose. Although, as I said before, I didn't much like the Sorcerer... What's he actually called? The Master of Possession?
Yep, that's the one.
Don't like that model. I still don't like the obliterators after seeing them. And also, the spider creatures are much dinkier, aren't they, in reality?
Yeah. It's weird, because when we first saw the photo of them, had no other models around it for context, I was like, he's on... Because obviously this is like a new size base that he's on. I was like, oh my god, he's on a Dune crawler base, which would put him at the same size as a Defiler almost. And I was like, this is going to be a huge kit.
Yeah, but he's not, is he?
Well, it's teeny tiny.
Well, it's probably a good thing, though.
The transport, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. But yeah, so Chaos and Vigilus are out today. Obviously, go check them out. Definitely worthwhile releases while we're picking up. I have bought the Vigilus book. I haven't bothered picking up the Chaos Volume 2 because I already own Chaos Volume 1 and the Demonkin book from the Shadow Spear box set, so it was all good for me. But yeah, really excited to see how that affects things. I think we're all going to get together for the next episode and pick out some things that we like from the book and talk about it in a little bit more detail. So look forward to that next episode. Next in the news is the Horus Heresy Siege of Terra. That's been confirmed as really existing, as if we didn't know. But yeah, they've actually come out and said who's writing it, and the fact they're all really excited about concluding what has been one of the most epic series of Warhammer 40,000 novels in the history of books about the Warhammer 40,000 universe. How do you feel about that, Phil? Are you excited for the upcoming release of the Siege of Terra?
Well, I loved the John French's Solar Wars. Is it the first book? The hardback cover looked pretty impressive, but I've not actually read any of the Horus Heresy books. So
what?
I know it's
Madness.
So while it's exciting, I'm not that excited because I've yet to get around to reading them. I'm sure I will, though. I'm sure I will.
Phil, you sit in the shed making models most of your time. What's going on? Get an audiobook, mate.
Well, I do normally do that, but I'm also in the shed normally trying to make a video to put on my YouTube channel.
Oh, Beyond the Tabletop, you mean?
Yeah, that one. Let's shamelessly plug it. Yeah, so quite often I'm doing that, so I don't actually get a chance to do the audiobooks. Currently, I'm actually listening to another John French book, which is the Herosian Wars.
There you go.
Which is all about visitors.
Well, Joe, as our resident liker of Horus Heresy books, what do you think about the Siege of Terra?
Well, obviously, I'm super duper excited. I love the Heresy. I've listened to, I'd say, 50% of them.
Wow.
And that is a vast amount of my life taken up.
That is a lot.
But no, it's really, really good. Obviously, the Horus Heresy started off as a paragraph in the old Space Marine. It was in the old Legio Titanicus rulebook. That was the first mentioning of the heresy, and it was like a brief paragraph about a war that started, and from that tiny little bit, they produced 3 books somehow. Then
didn't they do a board game as well at one point?
They did, yeah. And it's like, and now it's just they've managed to get 40 books out of the blooming thing, and over like the last 20 years, the Horus Heresy and the fight of Terra and the Emperor fighting Horus and Sanguinius dying. Spoiler alert! And then, he dies in the end.
So you think? Wait for him to return in 8th edition.
Oh god! And then I think, yeah, this is a thing that every wargamer has known over the last 20 years. But now we're actually going to have like a proper canon, like point by point story of it, and I think that's really good for anyone new coming in to the hobby.
Do you think they're going to change the ending?
No, they can't. I think every nerd on the planet would have some kind of brain hemorrhage and just drop dead.
But wouldn't it be amazing if at the end of the Siege of Terror, as they go up onto the what's the flag? It's Vengeful Spirit, isn't it? The flagship. They go up onto the Vengeful Spirit, and then Sanguinius just kills Horus, and then strikes down the Emperor and disappears. Ba ba ba.
Well, a fun theory I've heard is it's actually Horus on the throne and not the Emperor, which would make a more interesting and plausible twist.
Could you imagine?
It would be. He's not a psyker. He can't.
He's powered by all the chaosiness. He's got the warp power within him.
He learned some psychic powers.
Nah.
What if it's what if it is the Emperor on there, but Sanguinius put him there and left? Come on.
Well, it could be, yeah. Sanguinius goes and tries to kill the Emperor, and it's Horus then kills him afterwards. So then, how does Horus die? Yeah, I don't know.
Horus gets killed by the Chaos Gods for betraying them.
Yeah, could be. I think there will be a twist of some kind, but I think it will be with more minor characters, I would assume.
I would love it if they in one foul swoop changed everything everyone ever thought they knew about the 40k universe. And
well, maybe the was it the Red Rage, the Blood Angels? Maybe it's the guilt of them killing the Emperor.
Yeah.
And not of the failing of him.
Oh my god, that would be absolutely amazing. So when the Emperor dies by Sanguinius' hand, it sends a or not dies, but is mortally wounded. That's what's psychically projected that then scars them all.
Yeah.
Oh, they've got to do that. That would be hilarious. I mean, they really don't want to do that because no one's going to like it nearly as much as I'm making out. But I think if that happens, by the way, well done us for, being so smart.
I personally am really looking forward to the bit after the Heresy. So when
Guilliman writes a book.
No, so basically the bit after the Siege of Terra. So basically during the Siege of Terra, Aaron Dempsey Bowden has already made this canon, and he's part of the story. So he's basically during the Siege of Terra, the Emperor's children sod off halfway through, and that's why they potentially lose. Because the Emperor's children are like, nah, not doing this, going home. And it all crumbles around them. And basically, when everyone's running away from Terra, the one book I want to read is Perturabo's Murder Planet. That's what I want to read about.
What, in the warp?
I don't think it is in the warp. I think it's like just outside the warp. And he's like, hey, Dawn, come over here. I'm so vulnerable. Yeah. Boom, Murder Planet.
Bam. Well, there you go. The Lords of Terror, as they're calling them. So they've announced the writers. We've got Dan Abnett, of course. Aaron... Oh, God. Does anyone else want to take a punt at that? Aaron...
Bowden.
Yeah, Dembski Bowden. John French. Guy Haley. Gav Thorpe. And Chris Wright. So, yeah. An exciting array of writers that have done some very good work on various 40k or Games Workshop novels and other supporting literature over the course of the last who knows how long. So, yeah, really exciting. I would love them to do something completely out of left field with it, though. I'd love it if it was like, I don't know, any sort of random thing, like maybe Gabriel Seth is, warped through time and chats to, Fulgrim, something like that.
Yeah, well, the thing is, you've got like the flesh terrors are now a thing already within the Heresy. So I'd like them to go around and kill some friendly people, like they did to the Space Wolves.
Yeah.
And I'd quite like to see Alpharis up to some trickery, and everyone's like, "Whose side is he on? Ooh, we don't know."
What they should do as well, wouldn't that be good? They could release 2 different Alpharius books. One's the real story, one's the fake story, but we won't tell you which one's which.
That'd be pretty cool.
Wouldn't that be smart? See, I should be on that bloody team. I could come up with all sorts of terrible ideas. So there you go.
I'm looking forward to... I was going to say it's the Malcador Crusade, but it's not. It's whatever campaign they move on to after the Horus Heresy.
Well, there we go. Exciting times.
Fingers crossed.
So, next thing in the news to be talking about is the new FAQ and errata is coming shortly after the Adepticon event happening this weekend. So sometime in April we can expect a new FAQ, which is pretty exciting. What do you expect to see in that FAQ, Joe?
They fix the big angry knight,
Which one's that?
Castellan.
the Castellan. I kind of want it to be typical Games Workshop fashion, where they just go too far and just murder it from the game. That would be hilarious.
Well, if it's anything like what they've done with Guilliman, they just make it 50 points more expensive and be like, there you go.
Well, no, he was originally like 20 points.
Oh yeah, it was something ridiculous. Yeah.
The thing is, right, I think the problem is with the Castellan is they've already given it a token points increase, because that happened in the chapter approved 2018. So I think the thing is with the Castellan
No, there was no points change for it in that.
Was there not? I swear it had a points increase somewhere.
No, it was because the knights, all the knights were omitted from that book because effectively it came out too soon, just before it came out. So
well, fair enough.
There's a couple CP points hikes, but that was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, regardless, I think the thing is I don't think a points increase or a points decrease is the thing that the Castellan needs. I think what it needs is a slight rewrite of some of its weapons. I think the devastating power of the, what is it, like, it's not the volcano cannon, is it? What's the really like weird gun it's got that's like super powerful?
The mini shadow sword gun.
Is it a volcano cannon?
It is a volcano cannon, but it's a mini one.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact.
To be honest though, for its points, that's fine. All the guns it's got is justifiable for its size and points.
Yeah.
I think the problem what it has is the stratagems and relics and warlord traits are where the problem comes in. Because when you've got a 700 point model with a 3-up invulnerable save, at which, and it has re-roll 1s to shoot and
to wound and for number of shots.
Yeah.
And for damage.
It's too much.
Yeah.
And then if you kill it down to like 1 wound, and then automatically, I'm back on full wound profile, I can shoot normally.
Here is the thing, though, right? And I think this is a fundamental issue with the way the Imperial Knight book is written. How expensive could you make that thing to make that justifiable or to make that actually work? Because how many points could it be without it still being amazing?
How much is it now?
It's like 600 odd, isn't it?
I reckon at 800 points, people will still take it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So how expensive can you make it to balance it? I think the problem is looking at points exclusively for the Castellan isn't the right way to look at it. You fundamentally need to rebuild, rebalance, or change what it represents, because it's just a fundamental game design issue with that particular unit, in my opinion.
Well, it's weird because no one's complaining about the Valiant, and it's purely due to the 2 arms, like the weapon options that it has. It's if you were to increase, say, the cost of the stratagems, then you're penalising all the other knights.
Yeah.
Or even the Valiant, and it, like I said, it's for combo. So the fact that you can reroll 1s makes it really powerful. So you can always overcharge your plasma cannon because the rerolls are going to affect that. So you're less likely to do damage to yourself. So there's a lot of different. The points cost is the easiest way to affect just that one unit, and I think it, like Joe said, if it was 800 points. People would still take it, but it's a lot more balanced for, what you're then taking.
See, because I disagree, because I think the problem is with the Castellan is that I think the thing is with here's the thing, and my general consensus when it comes to Castellans is I think they work really well in ITC formats because of all the bolt-on rules that they add to ITC formats to make them a little bit more effective. I think the thing I find with the Knight Castellan is it never necessarily sticks around past turn 1, turn 2. Now, obviously, when I play Knight Castellans, it's predominantly I play them in tournament settings where I have an army that's very well tailored to dealing with them. But the point I always find is that the Castellan armies, the armies people build around Castellans, are never that terrifying because they're relatively threadbare. So if you increase that thing to 800 points, I think, again, you are going to see some people take it, but then you're then just going to delete it from existence in some respects because you're already stretching people quite a bit with that. So I don't know. Is it right that they should balance a unit to make it nearly unplayable? I don't know if that's really the right way of approaching it.
I think the problem with it, but the main issue with the Castellan is it's a unit that doesn't belong in this points bracket. So, like at 1750 points, a standard game of 40k is an infantry tank flyer game. And I think, as a broad statement, Lord of Wars don't belong in under 2,000 points.
Yeah, totally agree.
So, because above that, you're looking at Apocalypse. So 10 years ago, these things would never be seen. You'd never see a Shadow Sword and a Beyblade in an army like under 2,500. Once you got to 3,000 Apocalypse level, that's when these big units came in, because and it would work. They break the game at anything less than 2,000.
Yeah, it's like Horus Heresy has a fix. See, I do know stuff about Horus Heresy. So obviously things like their Lord of Wars require you to, I believe you can only take them as a percentage. So
Yeah,
25% of your total army. So, to take Horus for Sons of Horus army, you have to take him at, I think, a minimum of 2,000 points.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely interesting. I think, I just think the problem is always with that sort of stuff is that I think Games Workshop have a fundamental issue with certain types of units within the competitive meta of 40k, and I think there are certain things that you can do to counterbalance things like Castellans, but the problem you're always going to have is that, again, it's just the nature of the game. You can never truly balance these things. I don't want to see people getting rid of Lord of Wars because then knight armies go away altogether, and that's not a good thing either. I don't know what the solution is, but in terms of other things I would probably expect from the errata/FAQ, people seem to be of the opinion that they might do something to address flyers. I don't think they will. I think they're going to leave flyers alone still for another few months. What do you reckon about that?
No, they're totally going to either limit them or at least bring back boots on the ground.
You reckon?
Yeah, totally.
I don't think they will. I think what they'll address is the flyer footprint, which I think is the main issue within the game. To stop flyer...
blocking?
Movement blocking,
movement.
yeah.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, if you can pass through it without ending on it, then it's fine. Yeah. But then the problem always is that most people use them directly up against what they're pushed up against. So, I mean, there is a fundamental issue with flyers, but I think it's, again, the nature of the rule set and how it kind of works within itself. It's almost like, I mean, if you're going to try and fix flyers, you kind of need to revert them to, like, being skimmers or something, I suppose. Like, just give them the fly keyword and go, yeah, it's just one of those really weird parts of the game where you can charge a plane, but I don't know. I don't know if that's a good solution either. I think the problem is there's just a lot of different unit types in the game, and the problem is with 40k 8th edition is infantry and swarms and tanks kind of make sense within 40k. Knights, cavalry, flyers, all this sort of stuff starts to get really confused because the way stuff interacts with stuff is just bizarre. But there you go. All good stuff.
There isn't really a problem with flyers. There's just a problem with Elder and Drukhari flyers. So potentially you could see a points increase, but then the big FAQs aren't meant to be ever doing points increases. That's meant to be for chapter approved. So they might do a hotfix for a few troublesome units, and I imagine Castellan will be, if there is one, it'll be that.
I think they should make it that Drukhari flyers don't count for Agents of Vect. I think that would be a nice little thing.
Or you'd have to have Agents of Vect. You have to have a HQ on the table. It has to be a Lord character. And I think with the flyers, like they don't need a points increase or decrease. I think they need to limit the amount of flyers you can have on the table, because who'd have thought it? 7 Eldar flyers are really, really good.
Yes, they are.
2 or 3 is still really, really powerful, but you can deal with them.
Well, no, that's a very fair point. A very fair point indeed. But is there anything else, any other kind of wish list things we're expecting to see in the big FAQ, or not the big FAQ, but the FAQ and errata in the next month?
I don't think so. I mean, obviously, everyone always keeps going on about soup, but I don't think that will ever get addressed.
No, I agree.
And all the other issues about, daisy chaining units, because they're within rather than wholly within, I don't think that will get changed. That will only happen when a new edition of the game comes out.
Yeah. 9th edition is definitely not that far away, as I said once before. It might not be this year, but it won't be too far into 2020 before we see that. I think it's pretty likely to come fairly soon. But there you go. So the new errata and FAQs on its way, so that's super exciting. And on the topic of Ynnari, or not Ynnari, sorry, on the topic of Elder Flyers, the rumour is that Ynnari are going to be getting an update in the May White Dwarf. So photos have started circling around the internet of the back cover of the upcoming April issue of White Dwarf, stating that in May we will be seeing new rules for the Ynnari. So that's pretty exciting. Speaking candidly, as someone who obviously plays Elder, I'm really excited to see what they do to address and or update Ynnari. I think my problems with Ynnari are relatively well documented, but I think the issues are more towards the soup-like nature of them, but also just the abilities they have access to. They're just too complicated and too cumbersome within the game. And I think we desperately need to see a new, interesting, much more easy to digest and understand rule set for the Ynnari. So are you guys excited to see some new rules for Ynnari?
Only if they make Ynnari less good.
Which they definitely will. They definitely will, because Ynnari are too good. They need. I actually want to see the Vizark become amazing. I love the Vizark model. I'd love it if the Vizark was like 80 points and a badass. That'd be wicked.
Yeah, I think they need to do a bit what they've done with the Assassins, and the models that people aren't taking, like the Vizark, need to get better. And then the other two models, because isn't everyone taking the Cat Lady?
Yeah, Yvrain.
So she needs to get worse. The special rules, like the soul bursting special rule, needs to get worse. And then I presume that Avatar's okay. He's not super powerful, or does he need a bit of a bump? Do you think
the Incarn is okay? So the Incarn, the Avatar of the God of Death, is okay, but it's very expensive, and I think that's not very expensive, but expensive enough that it takes a decent chunk out of your army. So it would be good to see that get better, because at the moment it doesn't really do as much as you'd like it to do for the points you pay to have it. So that would be wicked.
Yeah, I personally don't have an issue with Soul Burst. I think what makes them too good is their access to all the different stratagems and the craft world abilities. I think because they get to have a Latok and Soul Burst, don't they?
Yeah, they do get access to LLTOC and Ynnari ability simultaneously. So what you do is you take a unit, make it Ynnari, but also make it LTOC Ynnari. So you basically have both the LTOC and the Ynnari keyword. Then you take a separate detachment, a battalion detachment potentially, or some other detachment altogether, and then you take a normal LTOC Wave Serpent, for example, and then you put the Ynnari LTOC unit inside of the LTOC Wave Serpent, so then as they're moving around the table, they've got the -2 to hit, -3 to hit, potentially. And then when you need to get out and do damage with them, then they come out and then Soul Burst. So yeah, it's pretty crazy, the sorts of combinations you can do with Ynnari.
So I think what they need to do is remove that ability. I think once that's removed, and they don't have access to the different craft world stratagems, just the standard, like, normal stratagems, I think they'll still be powerful, but they won't be devastatingly powerful. Like with, for instance, like Shining Spears that can advance and charge through the Samhan stuff. It's just a bit overpowered.
I also think as well they should remove access to certain types of units. Like, I actually don't think Aspect Warriors should necessarily be part of the Ynnari or at least not as they should be. I feel like there needs to be some, from a lore perspective, the idea of an aspect warrior is that it's part of the craft world philosophy. So the idea is that I'm going to be a Dire Avenger for the next, I think it's 100 years. I'm going to be a Dire Avenger for 100 years, and then when I've stopped being a Dire Avenger, I'm then going to go on and be a Striking Scorpion, or a painter, or something else. For they mix it all up so as they don't dedicate themselves and become obsessed like they used to, which is how it all went a bit wibbly and a bit bad. But I think, if you're actually part of a craft world society and you've dedicated yourself to this methodology and this philosophy that's kept you and your people alive for thousands and thousands of generations, the idea that you would trade all that in a heartbeat because you've seen, some very specific type of what is essentially a demon emerge from the fractures of Beltan seems a little bit kind of suspect to me. So I kind of feel like there should maybe be certain things that they can't use, like, for example, characters as well, like Eldred Olfran, Prince Uriel, I forget his name, but the sniper dude from Iltok, all the Phoenix Lords. None of them, in my opinion, should be Ynnari. I think it's one of those things where it's like, well, actually, no, because those are all stoic, long-standing craft world, advocates. The idea that they would sort of turn tail and become part of this new death cult, essentially, seems a bit mad to me. So, and I think that's really
weird. You just take them as allies. So a bit like how you've got, Knights, Blood Angels, and, Imperial Guard. Within the law, would it still not make sense that you got a separate detachment of...
See, I don't like the fact that Elder and Drakari, or rather, I don't like the fact that Craftworld and Dark Elder go together. I mean, there's a unit within the Dark Elder, the Incubi. The whole ritual they have is going out and killing aspect warriors and then brandishing their soul stones on their armor shattered. So the idea is that they go out, they kill an aspect warrior, and then in the ultimate disgrace, as he's sort of captured within his soul stone, they break it. So basically, they're not just killing the physical body, but they're also damning his immortal soul, which is really dark and horrible, right? And it's like literally the absolute worst thing they could do. And yet, in the way 40k is now with Elder, and the fact it's like, Drakari and Elder just go together, it's like you can have an Incubi model brandishing a bunch of shattered soul stones stood next to a Dire Avenger, and it's like that just wouldn't wash. And that's the sort of thing that I'm not really into in terms of the lore. The Dark Elder is so politically opposed to what Craftworld Elder is that the two really shouldn't mix. I
don't know about that. I mean, it's the same. It's like the old Allies Matrix. It's like if you're up against an Orc Horde or a Tyranid Hive Fleet, Elder and Dark Elder will get along like a house on fire because they'd much rather ally up with each other to fight a common enemy. But obviously, when that enemy's dealt with, then they'd be fighting each other.
See, I don't know. I liked to think back in the day that it was deeper than that, and that Elder were a little bit more fiddly. Like, the thing is with Elder is that they're doomed from the outset. All they've got is their principles. And I sort of feel like, actually, if the way I read Elder as a race, as I was picking up the lore going through the last 20 years, is they were a very proud, very noble, very stubborn people. And the idea that they just, over the last 6-7 years of new games publications, have just kind of gone, but you did all that stuff, and you didn't take us seriously, and you hanged out in whatever the port, the city in the webway is called.
Komorra?
Yeah, something like Komorra or something, but wherever it is. The fact that you hung out there and did some of the most debauched acts imaginable, again, it spits in the face of everything that Craftworld Elder stand for. Craftworld Elder fled on Craftworlds to protect the long-standing future of the race because they knew that all this debauched activity was going to lead to the downfall and destruction of the Elder race. So they are, like I said, it's like a devout group of Christians hanging out with, some mad, really like over-the-top party people who do like loads of drugs and, you know, have all sorts of loose sexual relations. It's just like, you know, they're very unlikely to get along is the broad thing. I used to sort of work on the idea that if there were Harlequins in the army, Harlequins could kind of act as the kind of mediator. So they're like, well, yeah, you have to do it because we're Harlequins and we're kind of like within Elder Society, sort of like the upper echelons, and we're telling you this is for the good of the overall race. And then maybe you can be like, I don't like Dark Elder, but I do appreciate and respect what you're saying, Mr. Harlequin. All right, we'll do it. So if there was like caveats to it, I always used to think that was quite interesting. But the idea that they could just do it because they can do it is weird to me. But we've gone off on a tangent, as we do. But Ynnari are coming. I think it's going to be good. I think they're going to fix them. And I think it's going to be exciting because actually they're going to hopefully become a lot less brain-dead army to run, which is good news all round, I'd say.
Definitely.
And to close out the news for this first attempt at a new segment, we're going to talk about Warhammer Horror. So what's Warhammer Horror, Joe?
Basically,
Brilliant. Well, there we go. Phil, do you want to field that question? What's Warhammer Horror, Phil?
Have you worked out, Joe?
my Skype just died. My connection.
Oh, is that what it is?
I thought it was.
Is that what it was?
I was just sat here talking. I was like, no one's responding. Why is my Skype beeping at me?
Well, there you go. So you know what Warhammer Horror is?
Yeah. So Warhammer Horror is basically a series of adult horror-themed books. So Games Workshop released a series of kids' books aimed at like
kids.
Yeah, primary school level reading, to kind of bring them into the hobby, and then Games Workshop have gone, but there's a lot of horror in this, and so we're going to release a lot of adult content, scary stuff, because the 41st millennium is terrifying. So we need a series of books to reflect that.
Are they going to say naughty words in the books, you think?
I imagine so. The Horus Heresy books have got naughty words in them.
This is an outrage. This game is for children. I can't have naughty words here.
So I was once told by a GW staffer that Warhammer is a game for adults. But we allow children to play, and younger generations to play, because that's how a hobby grows.
There you go.
Yeah.
Do you want to name that Warhammer employee?
I don't even know if they work for Games Workshop anymore.
Oh, there you go. So a former spokesperson of the hobby. A store manager, no doubt, said that to you.
Probably, yeah.
There you go. And they know it all. Not to besmirch anyone who's a store manager. You probably do know it all. I apologise for saying.
I think it's probably true, though. Because we play a game about groups of marauding psychopaths going around killing each other, like demons, which are basically all the worst emotions of humanity given life. Most of them have boobs flopping all over the place.
Just like you.
Yeah, just like me. And then you've got like Eldar created these gods, and you've got Dark Eldar, and like Chaos of the Whole, Orcs. Like Orcs are portrayed on the table as a very fun, hilarious force. But in reality, you won't want to be like 100 yards near them, because they just destroy you with a thought, because you're a soft squidgy thing.
That is true.
And they want to release a series of books to show that off and remind people that it is a scary place.
What do you reckon, Phil? Given that you've not got around to listening or reading Horus Heresy, would you take the time to listen to or read this?
Probably, because it's more 40k setting, and one of the stories is an audiobook. So, I mean, I've still got a bit of a backlog of audiobooks to go through, but I think having new subgenres within, sci-fi 40k, I think is a good thing. I'm sure we'll see other things. I mean, even like if you think about it, Eisenhorn is like a sort of film noir, like pulp detective story at the end of the day. I'm sure there's others. other genres, but it's sort of nice that they're acknowledging it and that they're writing specifically for those audiences. I think it's really almost these books, and if you look at the artwork on the covers, they're sort of designed for regular non-gamers to, people that like horror books to pick up and read and sort of lure them into 40k via the false pretenses of reading a horror book.
There you go.
I think that's sort of one of the aspects that this is aimed at. And again, it's a bit like the Warhammer Adventures. And any way to get new people into the hobby is good. New ways of telling stories is also good.
Absolutely. And are you upset that the first of these books appears to be about a Vestroyan?
Oh, what, instead of a Krieg person? No, I don't mind.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, the Krieg aren't afraid of anything, though, right? So they wouldn't be much use in a horror setting. They'd just be like, it's worse on Krieg, mate.
Yeah, I think the problem with Krieg is they're sort of portrayed as a bit sort of, not mindless automatons, but sort of pretty fearless in terms of their duty. And I think that probably makes them quite uninteresting in terms of a story for a character, because they're not quite as relatable as a regular guardsman.
There you go.
Krieg kind of had like a mini, almost horror book a couple of years back, didn't they, with Dead Men Walking?
Yes, yeah. But that's their only full novel that they've got. And they've got a couple of e-books as well, which are quite nice.
I thought you were referring to their rules. But there we go. That has concluded the news. Please let us know what you think of us doing this whole news roundup thing. Hopefully it's been fun and or informative for you. So yeah, the intent is just to try and add a bit more of a sort of formula to this and make it a little bit more punchy as an overall feature, because some people might want to check out the news and we just figured we'd try and round that up and make that interesting for you. So hopefully we've achieved that. And with that said, let's move on to the next thing. Thank you very much.
Right then, so this weekend just gone, it was this weekend just gone, I believe, that Dan played in the Warhammer World Grand Tournament Final in Nottingham with his Eldar. And Phil went up with him, not to play, just to watch.
He did, yes. He was a voyeur that weekend.
Yes, I ended up doing a lot of Blackstone Fortress with our good friend Richard and Sean, who we occasionally mention on this podcast.
There you go. Does Sean not get good friend status?
Oh, well, he's a good friend. Of course he is. He's the best of friends.
Best of friends. Wow, there you go.
It's too far away.
You mean that you didn't stand next to the table cheering him on?
Occasionally, but, left him to it for the most part.
Yeah. I imagine it would have been like when you watch the snooker and everyone who was watching has to be deadly silent. And then when someone does something good, you have to do a very quiet and a very dignified clap. And
the thing is with it, though, right, is like some people could probably find it quite suspect or bizarre when people start coming up and, talking to you on a regular basis, because they might be like, ooh, what are they doing? What are they checking? What are they thinking through? It's like, Phil could have been coming out and taking photos of the table, then going away to, I don't know, a council of advisors and being like, what options does he have? What should he do? And so on and so forth. So it wouldn't really be... I
wish we were only that smart.
I know, right? I know. If only actually we were able to think that far ahead and do that kind of thing, but we didn't. So there you go.
I expect your opponents would have been a lot more grateful had you have done that. Either at the times that we've gone up and we've seen in the YouTube celebrities playing their game, and they've just got like a horde of people just stood around them, bustling and asking them questions and asking for selfies and stuff.
Are you suggesting that we're YouTube celebrities now?
Well, no, we're not that far, but I imagine they'd be a lot more appreciative of Phil coming up and drawing a diagram and leaving quietly than coming up and basically rubbing himself on you and asking for selfies and how your life's going and interrupting the game.
That is true. I imagine Phil going away and drawing diagrams is far more pleasurable a thing than Phil coming up and rubbing himself up against me.
Depends what kind of diagrams I'm drawing.
Oh yes, well indeed. It's all relative, I suppose. But there you go. And yeah, it was last weekend as well, Joe. Although not for the purposes of this recording, obviously. It was a weekend, 2 weekends ago. There you go, numbers.
And yes, so please regale us with. We'll start with your list, I suppose. That's obvious. That's the obvious place to start.
It is the obvious, yeah, absolutely. It probably does make sense that I tell you what I put in my army list. So I suppose I'll do that. So I took a Craftworld and or Drakari Eldari army list. So Eldari soup was on the menu. Sorry, Phil, what was that?
Ooh,
Yes, absolutely, a bit of Eldari soup. I hear it's very popular with everybody these days, a bit of the old Eldari soup. So I've, I sampled it for myself. Been playing adaptations of this army list throughout the course of the last couple of months. Again, it's a very similar kind of list, constructually speaking. Constructually? Is that even a word?
Structurally?
Structurally probably is the right way to look. It's a very similar list to what came second at LVO, and seemingly a very similar list to the guy that won at Cali, and, a lot of people have been running the Eldar Flyers because they are very, very strong, and, I'm no exception to that. I would like to pretend... I'm not even really pretending. I genuinely did come up with this list on my own. I didn't just net list it, but the thing is that, everyone says that, don't they? And to be honest with you, I don't really mind if people think I net listed it, because at the end of the day, even if you net list it, as many people possibly did at the Grand Tournament Finals, it still takes quite a lot of skill to play it effectively and win with it, because there were a lot of people running very similar army lists to me who didn't do quite as well as I did. Spoilers.
I heard a very good analogy in another podcast about the list. It's basically like you could take a Formula One driver and put him in your car, and then you could drive a Formula One car, and he'd probably still beat you because you wouldn't know how to drive it. You wouldn't know how to even start it and get it off the grid, kind of thing. So unless you know what you're doing, and like a professional, you're not going to do as well if you just pick it up and try and run with it.
Well, indeed. And again, right, not wanting to risk sounding incredibly smug or arrogant about this. I know some people in the comments have mentioned that before. I think when I won Grand Tournament Heat 3, the general consensus from our commentators was that I was a very arrogant and very smug individual. So hopefully, by me acknowledging that at the start, there's a degree of humility here that comes through, and people don't think I'm an awfully smug person. But yeah, no, I mean, I am playing on easy mode as Alex. Again, someone else in the comments likes to say. Hopefully, he appreciates that little shout out I gave him there. But yeah, as Alex likes to say, hopefully I got his name right. I think last time I called him Adam, and now maybe it should be that I'm calling him Adam rather than Alex. But I'm going to go with Alex. I'm going to commit to that and hope for the best. Yeah, as he says, I'm playing on easy mode, and that is true to an extent. But again, if it was truly that easy, I think everyone would be doing really well with it. And personally speaking, I have lost with this list on a couple of occasions. It's not a guaranteed win by any stretch of the imagination, but without prattling on about the context and other people and all that nonsense, I better just get on and say what's in it. So first of all, we have a Eldari Craftworld Air Wing detachment that is LL TOC, so the Fieldcraft -1 to hit when outside of 12 inches. So this is 1 Hemlock and 2 Crimson Hunter Exarchs with star cannons. Crimson Hunter Exarchs with star cannons are incredibly viable, durable, annoying units because they can sit at arm's length relatively consistently, and because of the -2 to hit, they're a real pain in the arse to deal with. So those guys are really good at keeping at a distance. So if any of your flyers in your army are intended to kind of keep things at arm's length. You want to try and be a little bit more precious about the Crimson Hunters, because the -2 and the cost of admission, the weaponry they carry, makes them a little bit more of a viable option when it comes to protecting a unit. In addition to that, you have the staple of my armies for many, many months, which has been the Hemlocks, or more specifically, one Hemlock. Only having one Hemlock is a very, very bold, if not, dangerous play, because if someone gets to go first against you, they can very easily single out that Hemlock and very easily remove your ability to jink. So the fact that my Hemlock is the only thing in my army that has jink, and jink is such an integral part of playing this army when trying to kill Imperial Knights or other kind of big, heavy units. It is a bit of a risky strategy, but with the way the army list kind of came together, I really did feel like having one Hemlock was the right strategy. So one Air Wing detachment, as I said, and that was LL Tok. And then there was another Air Wing detachment, which was Drakari. And then, of course, it was the Cabal of the Black Heart, because everyone loves Agents of Vect, and I'm no different. But also because of the fact that it means your planes gain the benefit of the Feel No Pain from the Power from Pain ability. So essentially the the Cabal of the Black Heart gives you access to that Agents of Vect stratagem. But the overall ability is that you count as being one higher on the Power from Pain table than you may otherwise be. However, if you don't already have Power from Pain, you gain the Stage 1 Power from Pain ability, i.e. I Feel No Pain on 6s, or I Ignore Wounds on 6s. So that was 3 Razor Wing jet fighters, or jet planes, whatever they call them. And that was 2 of them with the Disintegrators, and 1 of them with Dark Lances, and then every one of them had the twin Splinter Rifles, and obviously the assortment of missiles and things that came together there. So those were my 6 flyers that kind of formed the bedrock of my army, I suppose. Questions or comments, gents? I appreciate I'm just saying words at this point without any interjection.
Given how you did in the end anyway, would you have taken another Hemlock? Would you have swapped out anything?
I am toying around with that in terms of tweaks for the rest of this year and how I'm looking at using the army list as things go forwards. There is a tournament that we're going to in Durrington in a week or two's time. Not a week or two's time, actually, it's more like a month away, actually. And in that list, I've gone back to 2 Hemlocks. In fact, I think I've gone back to 3 Hemlocks is my current plan. A lot of that's to do with the fact because that's a 2 detachment tournament, so it's a very different kind of build. But no, I think in all seriousness, taking the extra Hemlock would have removed some of the otherwise strong flexibility that the list afforded me. And I think the thing is with Elder is, and always what you've got to remember is, Doom is the ability that gets the majority of the work done. Jink, in all seriousness, with the way the army plays, is just the icing on the cake. It's not something that you desperately need, but it's something very, very powerful when you have it in play. So, you know, it's not the linchpin of the army, to say the least. I think Doom from the Farseer is far more important. So no, I don't know. I wouldn't say one way or the other. I think for a 1750 list. So again, the Warhammer Grand Tournament plays at 1,750 points. Based on that, I think I made the right decisions in terms of what I kept and what I removed in terms of optimization. Personally speaking, anyway.
Cool.
There you go.
And then the rest of your list?
Yes. So the rest of my list was 1 Samhan battalion. And in that Samhan battalion, I had an Altark on Jetbike with a power sword. He was my warlord, and I gave him the warlord trait that gives him +1 wound. And then he ignores wounds on 6s, so essentially 6 plus Feel No Pain. And then I took a Farseer Skyrunner on Jetbike, and I gave him the Phoenix Gem. The idea with the Farseer is it kind of runs around all over the place, so you want to give it a little bit more survivability in the form of the Phoenix Gem. And again, the Phoenix Gem saved my Farseer's, butt on more than a handful of occasions during the tournament. So having that Phoenix Gem in play just makes him that little bit more survivable, which is great. He's got the Doom and Executioner psychic powers along with Smite. So he was my second Psyker and my last Psyker. So I had 2 Psykers on the board. And then that's complemented by 2 units of Storm Guardians. 3 men in the unit had chainswords, and then the remaining 5 have the Eldari blades. It wasn't really for any particular reason other than the fact that that's what comes in the resin kits. You get you get 2 chainswords and let's see. I think you get 2 chainswords and 4 Eldari blades. So I had to buy like 3 of those resin kits, to upgrade kits for the Storm Guardian. So I ended up with like 5 with the regular blades and 3 with the chainswords, and I represented that in the way that I put the list together. But there was no real rhyme or reason to that. The idea with the Storm Guardians is that they're just cheap bodies to put on objectives, because having a 48-point 8-man unit that if you space them out correctly can control 2 objectives is very, very annoying. So, yeah, well in favour.
Are they cheaper than normal Guardians as well?
Yeah, so normal Guardians have a minimum squad size of 10, and they're 8 points a model. So these guys, the comparisons in terms of size of unit versus or minimum size of units, these guys are getting close to half the points cost of a Guardian squad, a regular Guardian squad.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I mean they're useless in the sense that they don't do anything other than score objectives. But again, anyone who shoots at a Storm Guardian in the early game, anyone who goes after those Storm Guardians, it's just a game over situation for them, because they have to expend a certain amount of firepower to deal with them, because they're still an 8-man unit that I can give 4-up invulnerable saves for 1 command point. So you still have to do something about them if you want to get rid of them. But whatever you're shooting at them, whatever you're doing to them, you're not doing to the things in the list that really get the job done. So that's the really annoying thing about Storm Guardians for your opponents if you're running a list like this, is that, it would be frustrating if they kill 5 or 6 Storm Guardians, but if 1 or 2 Storm Guardians still live, they've still got great objective grabbing capabilities, and that's shots that they didn't fire at your planes, shots that they didn't fire at your jet bikes, because the last part of the army list, the last few bits of the army list is a 5-man unit of Rangers. So that's a 5-man unit of Samhan Rangers. And again, the idea for the Rangers is that it basically meant that I could put them off the table and they're more or less just there to grab objectives. So the reason I took 2 units of Storm Guardians and 1 unit of Rangers is because if I needed to, for free CPs, I could put 2 units of Guardians into the webway and still put the Rangers into the webway, because they have that ability natively. So I could have all 3 of my troops off the board at the start of the game, which is hugely important on missions like 4 Pillars, where only troops can score. So in situations like that, being able to have all of your scoring units out of harm's way at the start of the game really shifts things, because if your opponent wants to take the early lead, they've got to put their stuff down, but then you can then immediately deal with their troops, and then in retrospect, or not retrospect, but in later turns, then bring in your troops and start controlling things and play that into the late game. So that works really well. And then, the last part of the list, which I suppose is really something that I used at Grand Tournament Heat 3, and something that I had a lot of success with, which was 3 units of Wind Rider scatter laser jet bikes, all in Samhan. Famously, the guy who came second at the LVO had 2 units of 9 of this. Now, the reason he uses 2 units of 9, as I could work out, is that he takes 2 units of 9 because one unit gets guide and another unit gets reroll 1s because he took it as Ynnari. I'm not taking Ynnari, and the reason I'm not taking Ynnari is because for scatterbikes, I still think Samhan is better than Ynnari because, yeah, sure, you get to re-roll everything with guide, but if you move and shoot, it's -1, so you only get to re-roll your 1s and your 2s. Freeze, you don't re-roll, and then you're still looking at a decent sort of chunk of misses there. Now, okay, fair enough. The trade-off is somewhat, reduced by the fact that they can shoot twice. But the general thing is that I think the ability to move and shoot without penalty and then to get the Ultark benefits hugely trumps some of the Ynnari buffs. Because the thing is with the Ynnari stuff is, especially now that the Kaladas Assassin is in rotation, the fact that the Vindicare Assassin has come into effect as well, the fact that they're so reliant upon this linchpin that is this relatively slow-moving Ynnari Psyker in the form of Yvrain, you end up in this really weird dynamic with a Ynnari jetbike army. I genuinely think the Samhan have the advantage because they have the flexibility to be where you need to put them and not suffer the penalties for moving and shooting as a result. And I've found every time I've played a similar kind of army list that's running it as Ynnari, I outperform them because I have the mobility, whereas they tend to be a little bit more static by comparison anyway. So, yeah, that's the list. It's 1750 points on the nose. I don't think I've missed any details yet. So the 3 units of jet bikes were 6-man units, so each unit had 6 jet bikes in it. And that's it, yeah. So 2 air-wing detachments, 1 battalion, a total of 10 command points. I have access to Vect, which is obviously hugely important. I've got huge kind of mobility in terms of all the flyers and all the jet bikes, and I've got just really good levels of firepower. So overall, yeah, I'm really happy with how the list performs and how it's come together. Highly recommend it to anyone who's looking at a competitive list at the moment. This thing is very strong and hopefully will continue to be so for a while longer. But it will take a lot of playtesting because, as I've discovered as I worked it through the last couple of months, there are some very bad matchups for this list, and a very good opponent will counter you very, very quickly. So you need to understand what your weaknesses are, and you need to understand how to exploit your advantages to the extent that those weaknesses are neutralized, because it's very easy to exploit the weaknesses with this army if your opponent is of a quality that they can do that in an effective manner, which at the Grand Tournament Finals many people were, so I had to have my wits about me quite consistently.
With so many flyers in your army, were you not concerned about people just trying to kill all your bikes first turn to stop you from scoring early game?
Yes. Now, there are ways that you can control that. So, first and foremost, if you've gone first, which is always the hallowed sort of statement of any kind of player, but if you go first, you can apply pressure with the planes. So what you do, and what's the really tricky thing about the planes, is you use them to block people in. So rather than just have it that the planes kind of, fly around the board in a pretty formation, you really just want to get them stuck into your opponent, because as soon as you block them off from moving by putting all these planes and kind of wrapping them around their big blocks of infantry or putting them in the way, it hugely restricts their movement. And if you hugely restrict their movement, you can keep your bikes at an arm's length. And if you keep your bikes at arm's length, you're not going to necessarily suffer. Plus also, if you go first, your bikes are going to do so much damage to the stuff that's going to threaten them at range that you're not necessarily worried about the following turns, because you're just going to kill the stuff that posed your infrastructure a threat. However, that being said, that's not always the perfect solution, so you've just got to be really mindful of the positioning of them at the start of the game, and then you've also got to be really mindful of where you leave them. So Fire and Fade is a massive ability for this army, the ability to be able to kind of put stuff somewhere and then put it back again. It's a big deal for this list. So you need to make sure that you fire and fade your way into safety where applicable. Not that I used it an awful lot throughout this weekend, because I'll be honest, the majority of times in the games I always played to go second, because my army, bizarrely, in the chapter approved format, does way better going second. So a lot of the time, even if I win the roll-off, I deploy my army in a relatively defensive setup and then watch my opponent deploy even more defensively, and then go, cool, you go first, and they do, and then they go, oh no, I can't do anything, and then you're like, yep, great, and now you're in trouble. So you've lost a turn, and a lot of the chapter approved missions are so much more advantageous to the people going second, because points are scored at the end of battle rounds, points are scored at the start of battle rounds. You have so much more capabilities to understand what needs to be tackled. So if you know in the preceding turn, or your opponent's preceding turn, that they're going to get loads of points because they control a certain objective, you can do what you need to do to get them off that stuff, so you can control the ebb and flow of the game. So yeah, in the broad sense, I want to go second. So I only went first twice in the whole tournament, and that was more by design. But it was bizarre in a way. It was funny when people let me go first. I was a bit like, oh, you. But there you go. Yeah. So yeah, that was that. That's the army list.
Cool. So, how did your first game go? How did you kick off the event? Was it strong?
Well, so game one was against a Games Workshop staff member by the name of Tim. So I came to the tournament really late. I was probably one of the last two people to register. And then that essentially meant that in the very first game, I played on the bottom table, table 84, against a chap named Tim. And Tim was sort of like the token GW player. And he was running a really interesting but not very well suited for the event army that was essentially a big Imperial Guard tank detachment. So he had the Baneblade. He had the Baneblade and loads of Lehman Russes and other kind of Imperial Guard tanks. And he took them as, Phil, you're going to need to help me out here. What's the one where they could advance and still shoot?
Talon.
Yes, that's the one. So he created this army list of fast-moving, really, really scary tanks that I think for a lot of opponents would have been a bit of a like, what do you mean you got loads of tanks? Like, because actually it was quite anti certain types of list, and it was quite interesting in some regards. But for my army list, it wasn't really that difficult. So he went first in the game, moved some stuff forwards, shot some stuff, managed to drop. I can't even remember what he killed in the first turn. I think he managed to put some wounds into and actually kill one of the planes in the opening turn. But then in response, I was able to kill I've forgotten the name of the big tank again. The Baneblade, thank you, yeah. So in response, I killed the Baneblade, and then just kind of choked his lines with flyers, because I basically just put flyers everywhere and was like, well, you can't move anywhere because flyers are in your way, and just proceeded just to kind of tear him to pieces turn after turn. So, I wish there was more of a story to tell with this. I mean, it took me 4 turns to kill all of his tanks because they got a lot of wounds. But yeah, it was just like there was no moment in the game where I was even remotely threatened. It just was a very, very easy win. No disrespect to Tim as a player; he was a really nice guy, really beautiful looking army. But yeah, it's just one of those games where just the matchup didn't work. I remember he declared everything with the Baneblade at my Hemlock, which was outside of 12 inches. And I said, you sure you want to declare everything? And he was like, yeah. And I said, right, okay, cool. Well, before you do that, I'm just going to let you know that there's this stratagem called Lightning Fast Reflexes, and if I play it, your ballistic skill 4 goes up to will be reduced by -3 because of the flyer combined with the Eleltok ability, then combined with that. So I said, look, if I do that, you're -3, and that means the Baneblade can't hit me at all. And he went, well, I've declared it, so if you're wanting to do that, then just do it, because that's the game. And I was like, oh, it's really very nice of you to say that. But I was trying to sort of be like, but you don't have to. And he's like, no, my intention is to try and kill that Hemlock. If you're going to try and stop me by doing lightning effects reflexes, that's how the game goes. So I'm declaring the Hemlock. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm declaring lightning fast reflexes. And he goes, cool, that's that then. And I was like, okay, cool. So that was like in his turn 1 where he was trying to kill the Hemlock as an opener. And I was like, oh yeah, that's how that goes. And yeah, so that was just the sort of game, man. It was just a very, very, I hate to say it, very, very easy win for my army. And that's no reflection on his ability as a player. That's just one of those matchup things. It just never went his way. And it was super easy to kill all his tanks over a course of various turns. So, yeah, I wish I could sound less arrogant or less irritating about that match, but it just really was a hugely unadvantageous matchup for him. What do you reckon of that, Phil, seeing as the resident, Imperial Guard player? Does it anger you that there's such a massive gulf in abilities between such armies?
Well, a little bit, yeah. And I remember at the time you were saying that he was actually being quite aggressive with his tanks and wanted to move more forwards, but then he couldn't because you got all your flies in the way. And it's a bit annoying that flies can go over stuff, but nothing can go under them. But that's a conversation for a different time.
Exactly.
It was a really nice looking army. I remember having a quick chat with him about it. And he actually played my friend Nick later in the day, who had Harlequins and also sort of made mincemeat out of him because of all the fusion pistols, I want to say, fusion blasters. Yeah, so it sounded like he probably had a couple of bad matchups. And that's sort of the problem when you run an all-tank army. Your only ability really to win the game is to table your opponent or by some fluky chance get on some objectives, because he could have taken it potentially as a objective secured tanks, taking them as a spearhead, but even then one tank is still only worth one model, so it's quite easy to other troops sort of outscore you in that respect. So I mean it would be tough, and all vehicle lists aren't particularly meta in any way. Tanks aren't that great this edition, so it's a bit of an uphill struggle, despite how sort of fluffy and narrative that kind of army looks and is.
Yeah, I think, again, because Tim was there as the kind of fill-in guy, because the numbers weren't even, because he was there as the filler guy, he didn't necessarily bring, or wasn't really someone who was able to bring a super, super powerful army. And I just got lucky because I got to play him in the first game. So, yeah, my tournament was off to a great start because I basically sort of dodged round 1 by having the easy mode to kick it off, which was quite cool.
Hand tactic going to the GT Heat, any Warhammer World event now, you've just got to go turn up at the very last moment and hope there's an odd number of players, and then you'll get the Games Workshop staff member. Well,
seemingly. I don't know if it's guaranteed, but that's how
I think, yeah. So it's quite.
Although I will say, and I think Phil can attest to this now, every time I go to Warhammer World events with the guys, Joe and Phil and pretty much everyone, it's always like, come on, Dad, we got to get there for like crazy o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, why? Registration doesn't close till 10. Why are we needing to be there at 8:30? It's, the tournament. And I'm like, all right, great. So when it was just me on my own with no pressure from any outside influences, I was just able to rock up when I felt like it. And how was that, you reckon, Phil? How would you describe the experience when we walked in at 9:45?
Well, I think if I was playing, I would be extremely nervous about rocking up so late, especially when I normally have quite a large army of models, for example. Unless, of course, I'm doing my own tank list, which obviously is the reason why I wasn't in the final. It was a breeze. We went straight in. You normally queue outside for ages in the cold, then you queue on the stairs up into Bugman's because you go through the side entrance because the main entrance isn't open, and you're normally on that staircase for like 10 minutes and it's all a bit cramped and sweaty and stuff. And literally then you end up queuing in Bugman's for just as long as well. But this time you just walk straight in, you registered straight away. They did a really cool thing where they actually handed out trays so everyone could actually get their models out of whatever container or case that you've got and actually put them on the trays to carry them around, because normally you do that at the table when you're gaming, and it actually sped it all up because everyone had their army all ready to go. Basically, as soon as the hall was open, people could go and drop their models on the table and get gaming.
There you go. So that was game 1.
I was just say, if I was there, I probably would have flipped my lid. Yeah, I'm one of those very British people, and it says the time on the piece of paper says 9 o'clock. You should be there exactly 5 minutes before. That is how it works. And I will stand in this queue in the cold diligently, with no messing about. And I will take it, because that's how it works. I remember, completely sidetracked this, by the way. I remember once we did a doubles event. It was me and Phil, and then Dan, I think you were with Mike at the time.
was, yeah.
And we went to Warhammer World. We got there on the Sunday, and then you were like, it's 10 minutes, let's go to McDonald's. And I was like, no, we're not doing this. And then 2 minutes later, I seem to have found myself in the driving seat of my car, driving you to McDonald's.
I think I was driving. I think the only reason you ended up having to go there is because I drove you there.
Yeah, I think it's because you needed help carrying stuff. And I don't know how I got roped into it. I think you... And then we got back to the hall, obviously late. I was running around, and I was like, I can't deal with this. It's too much.
But that's not how I remember it, Joe. We went and got McDonald's, came back, and there was no issues.
There was loads of issues. I remember being very upset because we got to our table late, and I put my McDonald's under the table, and then I promptly forgot about it. At the game, and it was cold. There's nothing nice about cold McDonald's breakfast.
No, that's true. Although on the plus side, I probably paid for it, right?
Probably. I think that was part of the deal of me going, actually.
There you go. So you could waste some food. What a treat.
Yeah. Anyway, game 2. Carry on.
Yeah, sure, no worries, man. So game 2, I played against a chap called Sai. Now, funny story, me and Sai knew each other from the olden days of my early wargaming career. When I was growing up in glorious Salisbury. Many of you will know it from famous incidents involving Russian spies, but back in these days there were no infamous instances of the horrifying nature of what occurred there recently. But I used to frequent the Salisbury Games Workshop, playing games as small toy soldiers with many different people, one of which being this gentleman Sai, who in later years ended up being a game developer for Hawk Wargaming, working on Drop Zone and Drop Fleet Commander. So Sai's a really good gamer, really good guy. I think he was telling me he's running a gaming cafe in Birmingham, which I deeply regret not remembering or checking the name of before starting this podcast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the details of Sai's gaming cafe in Birmingham that does board gaming and wargaming and all the usual fun, Magic the Gathering, I would imagine. I don't know for sure. Don't take my word for it. But he does that in Birmingham. So if you're in the Birmingham area and want to go chat to a really, really lovely guy who loves wargaming and also happens to run a board game / gaming caf, Sai's your man. And the description of or name of his facility can be found below in the description, I hope. Unless I was unable to find it, in which case there'll be a description saying I was unable to find it. Anyway, so I played this guy Sai. He was running a Thousand Suns list, which was consisting of a Renegade Knight, absolute truckload of Zangors on discs with the shaman or the war chief or whatever they're called, the thing that gives them +1 to their hits. Oh, sorry, were you going to say what that was there, Joe?
Zangor Enlightened, isn't it?
Could be. All I know is that they've got a 24-inch range, strength 6, damage decent. He took loads of these things with Ahriman and the Renegade Knight, and he also had a Leviathan Dreadnought, a Chaos Leviathan Dreadnought that he was calling Big Tony throughout the process. So Big Tony was quite an intimidating addition. But nonetheless, in this game, he went first, moved up the table. I'd screened stuff and kept stuff back enough that nothing really terrible happened. And then in retaliation proceeded to kill his Renegade Knights and near kill one of the big units of Zangors down to just 2 models. There were some Rubik Marines as well and some cultists. I forgot about those additions. But yeah, so in my first turn, I murdered quite a lot of stuff. And then in turn 2, he didn't do an awful lot in retaliation. And then I proceeded to table him in turn 2, which was pretty mad when you think about it. But again, very, very matchup centric. It wasn't something that really was that difficult to do. I mean, to be honest, because me and Si hadn't really seen each other for years, we spent the majority of the game catching up on old times and chatting quite extensively to one of the events team guys from Warhammer World. So there's like a new events team guy at Warhammer World. He was really interested in gauging our opinions on favourite game votes, best army votes, generally the format as it stood. So we probably chatted for about 40 minutes to the Warhammer World events guy, because the game just was over so quickly, or was about to be over so quickly. It was like, I think at the end of his turn 2, he was so resolute that he was going to lose, that we just kind of chatted with this guy, and then was like, okay, cool, there's like, an hour to go to the end of this round. You want to finish your turn 2 and see what happens? And sure enough, it was a tabling. So that was another fabulous turn for the Eldari Flyers. Again, if I'm honest, I'd probably call it a bit of a freebie again, but credit where credit's due to Si. His army list actually does have some very, very good output and options. He came away with a few wins, so it wasn't a guaranteed thing by any stretch of the imagination. But it just sort of went that way, that I just had an extraordinarily good turn 1, and he didn't, and then the game just sort of tilted, and that was that. So yeah, that was game 2. I'm conscious also of the fact that I'm not telling you what the missions were for these things. So the second mission, I believe, was the... It was I can't even remember. I think it was the one where you don't get invuns when you're within 12. Yes, that was it. It's the one where you don't get the invuns where you're within 12 of the centre, which is why his turn 1 was so devastating, because everything in his army had an invun save, and that was it, basically. And he had to move it into the middle in his turn 1. And then I was like, cool, take all these shots with no saving throws. And it was like, oh, God, everything's dying. So, yeah, that's how that went.
And Leviathan and Demons with no invulnerable save is just basically ruins them.
Yeah, and that was the thing. I think if I played him in any other mission type, it probably would have been a more difficult game, but because of the fact that he just got really unlucky facing me in that one and had so much of his stuff having its invuns nullified, the game just was horrible for him, basically. It was just one of those where it's like, cool, I win this game by sacrificing the only save I have, and you output an absolute truckload of shots. So, yeah, that's how that went.
Cool. So far, without sounding rude, a relatively easy ride.
Yes. Oh, God, yeah. And honestly, at that point, I was sort of riding high, because I was thinking, oh, yeah, this is it, got it in the bag. Easy, lovely. And then I came to my game 3, which, was a very interesting development. So in game 3, we were playing the mission. Forgive me, I can't remember the name of it, but there's one objective in the centre that's always worth 2. There's an objective in your deployment zone, which is worth 1 to you, and there's an objective in your opponent's deployment zone, which is worth 2 to you. So obviously, vice versa in terms of how the value goes. This guy that I played against was a really, really great guy called Stefan from Scotland. He lives in and around the Glasgow area. Absolutely brilliant guy to play against. Very, very good player. And he was running a combination of Custodes, Grey Knights, and Imperial Guard. A very interesting list, and not something that I've seen in a while. And one that he just played phenomenally, because the issue I had was, and I can kind of own this and admit to this, is I was just riding high on 2 easy wins, and I saw this guy's army, and I just went in the bag, mate. Not a problem. I let my arrogance get the better of me, to be fair, and I basically ended up losing to this guy because I rolled to seize the initiative. I don't know why I did it. I was just having a laugh chatting to this guy. I thought, actually, rather than, letting him go first for a change, I'm going to see if I can seize the initiative. And sure enough, I roll a 6. And I'm like, great, cool, I've seized the initiative. And then I stopped and thought, did I actually want to do that? And it was like, yeah, no, go on then. I'll just deal with it. It'll be fine. So in the opening turn, I killed 3 units of mortars and a bucket load of his guardsmen. So at the end of his turn 1... he was just looking absolutely decimated. But the problem was that the biggest mistake I made was I didn't move on to any objectives. I didn't press my advantage at all. I just killed a bunch of stuff, but not everything, and just went, that's fine, whatever. I've got this, no big deal. And I didn't maneuver stuff because I overestimated, and again, I don't know why this is, because I've played against Custodes Shield Captains on bikes so much, and I know they're not that good. But yet, for some reason, in that moment, I was like, oh yeah, well, I don't want to just risk my planes early doors. I'm going to keep them at arm's length and not push this advantage. I'm just going to do it this way, and I'll kill him in turn 2, turn 3, because it'll be easy, and then I'll just score the objectives, and that'll be that. But then, in his turn 2, in his turn 1, he maneuvers everything into the middle of the board. Now, to be clear, we had a big piece of terrain over the centre objective, which we were both happy with. We both agreed it. So whether or not you could have argued, there shouldn't be a piece of terrain over the objective or not, we'd agreed it. So it doesn't really matter contextually whether there should or shouldn't have been. We felt it appropriate that it could be there, so we played on under those circumstances. Neither me or him stated it as a negative, so we just carried on. And again, maybe if I wasn't, having come off the back of 2 really easy wins and feeling myself, maybe I wouldn't have let that slide. Maybe I would have been a bit more like, actually, because that's going to be a distinct advantage, maybe we need to, keep the objective out in the middle, hidden by terrain. But regardless of all that, in his turn 1, he goes out and he grabs the centre objective, and I can't do anything about it because this building is all enclosed except for one side, which is on his side. So I need to manoeuvre my army. And I managed to kill all the stuff in my turn 2 that he had in the middle, except for one character. So the character then scored him 2, and he was able to leave another unit on a thing. So he, at the end of my turn 2, or at the start of his turn 2, scored 3 victory points, and I'd only scored 1. Admittedly, I also had first strike, so I was on 2, but he had also got first strike, so he was on 4. And then in his turn 2, he proceeded to bring in all these Grey Knights who started doing vortexes of doom and smites and all sorts of horrible stuff to my infrastructure, to my bikes and my guardians and all this stuff. So it literally was, he played it perfectly. He absolutely destroyed my point scoring units and left me with nothing but flyers after about 3 or 4 turns in, or 3 turns in. So yeah, he just absolutely played it perfectly, and I played it terribly. So this was not a game where I can come away and go, wow, the dice were dodgy, or he shenanigans me. It's like, no, I absolutely mucked up I did terrible. That was and I can make my excuses because of the fact that I had 2 easy games and I was all high on myself, which I have done, and you know I'm aware of that. But yeah, I played it really bad, and I finished the day on 2 wins and 1 loss. And in truth, I kind of feel like that was the best thing that could have happened because, not to spoil what's to come, but off the back of that, I had the evening to really reflect on how that came to pass and how I allowed that to happen. And I think it was a good opportunity for me to kind of step back and go, Dan, you got a good army here. You were playing it well. You just mucked up, and that's completely on you. You need to kind of dust yourself off and go into day 2 and actually really apply yourself better and do a better job. And you know, I say this a lot, and I hate the sound of when I say it, but I always believe you learn more from your defeats than from your wins. And in that instance, I absolutely took a lot more away from that defeat than I think if I had won, I would have ever have done. It personally.
I think, and you handled it right in terms of loss, because I think a lot of people, had they have lost a game in the finals, they'd be like, well, that's it. I'm not going to win, so I don't care anymore. And then they'll either just drop out or they'll just cruise the rest of it and not really think about their games because they're like, I just drink now.
Yeah.
Well, it definitely looked like there were less people there on the Sunday. At least, maybe it was just people weren't turning up on time, because when we were there, there was quite a few empty tables. You had to swap partners, didn't you? Because, without going into it, but the person that you had on the first game was someone you already played. Yeah. But there was quite a few people where they were waiting around for ages, and either it didn't look like they were getting a partner, or maybe they were just turning up really late. So I think there would have been a few people with that attitude where they're like, I've lost a few games, I'm not in it, that I'm just not going to play.
Yeah, it was really interesting because obviously a lot of people go there with the attitude of I'm going to win the whole thing. And yeah, we did see a huge quantity of dropouts, or a relatively large quantity of dropouts in day 2. But again, not just because of the fact that I do this podcast and I wanted to talk about it, but also because I believed that I still had the opportunity to get a high finishing position. I just was like, no, you know what, this is just how this goes, and I'm going to keep on plugging along with this thing and keep on playing. Because, you know, I need to, I want to see how well I can do. And credit where credit's due, right? Steph, if you're listening to this, mate, absolutely amazing game to play. Really looking forward to getting to play against you in the future. I'm definitely keen to take a trip up to Glasgow at some point and actually have a run back with you, because honestly, one of the most entertaining games of 40k I've had in a little while. Just a really nice bloke who played it well. And again, that's really all I can say. That loss was one that I needed, but also I deserved, because I absolutely ballsed up, and that's all there is to it, you know. So even with this super potent, super powerful army list, I lost because I just played it really badly, and that's how that goes. So there you go. And also that same evening, I remember I was watching the UFC from the O2, and old Darren Till, the Liverpudlian UFC fighter, managed to get knocked out quite tremendously. And I remembered watching him lying on the floor, knocked out after having been punched in the head, and I went, well, at least I'm not doing that, you know. Give yourself a sense of perspective. At least when I lose at Warhammer 40,000, I'm in a nice warm room, slightly intoxicated by alcohol, talking to my mates and having a good time, rather than being unconscious on the floor. So, you know, swings and roundabouts, I suppose. Yeah.
Objectively, you are better off.
Yeah, exactly.
So having been humbled by a surprise opponent, how did you feel going into day 2?
So going into day 2, I felt tired, a little bit hungover. So Richie was celebrating his birthday the night before, So we went out with Richie because he was with us. I had a bit of a sore head. I didn't necessarily get as much sleep as I probably should have done. And I was looking across at a massive horde of orcs, and it was like, good. This can only go well. So the mission for this one was the one where you give your characters intel points, and they accumulate points from turn 3 onwards if they're still alive. And then there's a central objective that only your characters can score. And I played against this orc player. Now, I was pretty much set up and ready to go on the buzzer. This guy was, a really, really lovely bloke, but he'd brought something like 200 models. And if I'm honest, he brought something like 200 models and clearly had no idea or had not practiced playing it in 2.5 hours. So he was not comfortable playing his army within the time frame of the game. So essentially, his setup took a good amount of time. Bear in mind, I know, or I feel like I know when I'm being slow played. I didn't feel like this guy was slow playing me. I just think that he had ambitiously brought an army that he hadn't practiced enough or hadn't gotten comfortable with, because he had 90 orc boys, 24 looters, 50 grots, 12 cannons, and a bunch of characters. So he had an absolute truckload of models. And he didn't seem to understand how those models then sort of need to interact with each other or how they actually work, because, he was trying to move units through units and do all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, well, you can't. He's like, I'm going to put take my weird boy and then put him the other side of this unit of boys. And I'm like, well, how are you going to do that? Because he only moves 5, and you can't, unless you're splitting them like the Red Sea and moving through the middle, which you yourself can't do because everything's bunched up. He literally had a deployment that was just like a massive blob of models, and it was like, oh my god, this guy is taking a long time. And again, no disrespect to him, I didn't think he was doing it to be competitive with it. I just think he hadn't practiced it. So I will say that if anyone's going to take an army that's comprised of nearly 200 or more models, really, really spend time getting good at playing that game quickly, because it actually doesn't necessarily always play to your advantage. Obviously there are instances where orc players have used slow play to win major tournaments, but in this instance it kind of played to his disadvantage, because he essentially took, out of a 2.5 hour game, we only did 3 turns, but his 3 turns took maybe an hour and 45, hour and 50 minutes, because I broadly timed it on my phone. He had taken like an hour and 50 minutes to do his turns. I had taken 40 minutes to do my deployment and 3 turns. So it's that thing where like the game just went on and on and on because he was taking so long. But at the end, he hadn't done the mission. He'd actually completely forgot about the mission because he was so stressed trying to move his models around and trying to think tactically and resolve what he was trying to resolve. He just didn't actually at any point go, oh, actually, I need to kill your characters. So we got to turn 3, and I was just winning because I killed all his characters that were a threat. I was like, okay, cool, I'll use the flyers and their mobility to go after characters, and he'd left them out in certain positions, and I managed to kill those off. So I had Slay the Warlord, I had First Strike, and I'd killed 2 out of his 3 characters that were scoring, and my 2 characters that were scoring were still alive and hidden at the back of the board, so he couldn't ever pose a threat to him. So it was one of those things, it was like, it just, by the end of turn 3, which was the end of the game, he hadn't done the mission, and I had, because but as he said, it was like, we could have technically played into the lunch break, but we sort of talked it through, and it was like, well, in turn 4, you're still not going to kill these characters, because even if he was able to have jumped a unit of his big 24-man unit of looters across the board, that unit of looters could only be positioned in such a way as they could kill one of the 2 characters, if he even was successful with the psychic test. And then assuming that he was able to do that, yeah, theoretically, if it went on for another turn, he could have found himself in a situation where he could have maybe have killed both. But it was real hypothetical. And to be honest with you, he'd taken so long to play his 3 turns, it just turned into one of those games where it's like, well, I've taken the majority of the game to get this far. I've mucked up. You've won. It is what it is, because that's how the game is. And, you know, within a tournament setting, yeah, if you're going to take 200 models, I highly recommend you spend time learning how to use it, because it's hard work and it's stressful. And I saw this guy get very stressed at the fact that he brought this army, because it was hard for him, for sure.
Yeah, I think if you're going to bring that kind of models, like, you got to learn to do your fast dice. Like, movement trays is a must. And I think, like, if you are bringing that, like, it's got to be a seasoned player, I think. I think you've got to be a really good player to begin with to make orcs work efficiently, competitively. And then if you're going to bring them to an event, you've got to be on point, because people are just going to be looking at you. Like, from the moment you walk through that door, people are going to be like, he's bought orcs, he's either really, really good, or he's just here to slow play. And that's where and that's the box they're going to put you in, whether you're doing it on purpose or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely, as I say, I definitely didn't think he was trying to slow play, and especially given the fact that he was so unmindful of the mission that I can't believe he was slow playing, because if he was slow playing, I would have expected him to have taken an early lead and try and control it. But he was losing from, like, turn 2 onwards from the way it went. So it was like, well, you know, here's what it is. So, yeah, I mean, again, though, his army list was terrifying. Had it not been for me losing the night before, thinking about the mission. So me and Richie, when we were going in, we were like, okay, what are the last missions? How do we need to play each of these missions? And we were talking it through the night before, and even in the morning before the first game, it was like, right, if you get this mission, play it this way. If you get this mission, play it that way. And we were just, you know, I'd completely refocused myself on my approach. And all of a sudden, my flyers in that mission just became sacrificial. I was like, yeah, have them. I'm going to cover you in these things, and just, you know, put flyers in your face and just hope that you focus on them, because every turn you focus on my flyers, you're not focusing on the things that matter, which are my characters in that mission. And that's exactly how it went. I mean, yeah, massive props to dear old Rich, and you know, when it went through the process of talking these things through and reevaluating how this stuff worked, because yeah, it was just one of those things where I refocused how I was going to play these games, and I played the mission, I played it really well, and I got the win. I would not have beaten that army if I had played that army in game 4 the next day off the back of 3 wins. I probably would have lost to him, because I would have just blindly tried to continue to table people or whatever, you know. And I think, yeah, so yeah, genuinely very good game, very good player, went the way it went, was fun. There you go. Game 4.
Good.
A win.
And so yeah, so I guess the next thing to talk about is game 5. I can't really think of a little addendum to go in between there.
Well,
it's
there
quite
you go.
nice you rounded out. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you did it perfectly, mate. That was a wonderful little addendum, as you say. So yeah, round 5 was against another Elder player called Dan, a nice lad from Coventry. He had lost his game 4 because his opponent had mucked him around. So he turned up to the table and he looked a bit flustered, and he saw what he was going to be playing against, and he was a bit like, oh God, hang on, what's this? And we talked to the TO, because it turns out he had 1-2, lost 2, but 1-2, drawn 1, lost 1, or something along those lines. So he was like in contention, but a little bit further down. But the reason he'd lost the one he lost is because he refused to play the guy. So what happened was, in his game 4, is he came to the table and his opponent went, I think you'll find that Ravager hasn't got disintegrators, they got dark lances. And the guy was like, yeah, but I'm just using them as disintegrators, it's cool, right? And he went, alright, yeah, cool, I'm just going to go get a drink. and then a tournament organizer comes over and goes, just been told that you're using, that you're not WYSIWYG, and that you need to rewrite your army list because, you know, you can't use Dark Lances and claim that they're disintegrators. And he was a bit like, seriously, you've done this to me. And the guy was like, you know, oh, well, you know, tournament or whatever. So he very correctly, in my opinion, went, all right, mate, take the win. If it means that much to you, have it. It doesn't matter. So Dan, honestly, was an absolutely top bloke, an absolute pleasure to play. I said to him at the start of the game, I said, mate, if you want to revert to your old army list, because he had to rewrite his army list to reflect the WYSIWYG nature of what he has. And I said, well, if you want to revert to your old army list, mate, I'm happy to play. He goes, no. I've been told off. I've got to do it this way. Not told off, but told I've got to do it this way. So I'm going to do it this way. But yeah, had he had the original version of the army list, he probably would have had a much easier time against me. He probably still would have gone the same way, but he would have had a lot more threats in terms of being able to deal with the bikes. But yeah, that is again another interesting lesson, I suppose, is that if you're going to come to a tournament here, you've got to be prepared and ready to deal with the fact that people can sometimes pull you up on these WYSIWYG things. So, you know, try and make sure your armies are what you see is what you get, within reason. I mean, obviously, sometimes you do cool proxies or cool conversions, but yeah, some people will use anything they can use to gain an advantage, and obviously this guy Dan sort of suffered at the hands of that. But yeah, when I played him, he had a Drakari army. It was 3 Ravagers. He had 9 Talos, 3 Ravagers, and then a Craftful detachment with a Farseer, and a few units of Dire Avengers and some other bits and pieces. So very, very powerful army with a lot of board control and a lot of threats. So very, very concerning in terms of what that was. We were playing 4 pillars, so this is the mission where troops are in effect, so I actually put all my troops off the table at the start and then brought them in subsequent turns. And then, yeah, I mean, again, he went first. Oh, no, I went first in this game, not because I wanted to, because he gave it to me. He was like, he deployed first, I deployed in response, and he went, yeah, you go first. And I was like, oh, you did to me what I've been doing to everyone else, you scoundrel. But then I proceeded to actually do quite a reasonable amount of damage to him. I managed to kill one of the units of Talos. I managed to, because again I doomed and jinked them and then just laid into them with lots of scatter laser shots. And then I managed to kill one of the Ravagers as well and leave the other one fairly wounded. So it was a really successful kind of opener. And then in response, he kind of applied a lot more pressure to my bike squads, which was the right decision on his part. But then essentially the game just turned into it tilted itself in turn 3. At the end of my turn 3, he had just lost so much. But we just had a great time playing, and you know, I was really grateful to play against a guy like him so far up the tournament, not because it was an easy win or anything stupid like that, but because actually he was just a really nice bloke. He'd had a horrible last game, and I just really enjoyed playing against him and actually kind of brightening up his day, because he was just really bummed out after that 4th game. So even though he lost to me, we had a great time playing it, and it was a lot of fun. And you know, both of us were saying afterwards it was absolutely a great game, and I gave him a favourite game vote, he gave me a favourite game vote, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that was super cool, and yeah, just a really, really nice guy that was an absolute pleasure to play. You know, hopefully get to play him someday down the road again. But, you know, because the thing is, as much as it sounds like, and I don't want to kind of get into it too much, but as much as it could sound like I'm a super serious player or a super serious competitive player, I don't really want to be. Not in the sense that I don't want to have fun while playing. So if I'm playing you, I'm going to try and make it entertaining as we go along. And I'm not going to try and argue the bollocks with you throughout the process. I'm just going to, you know, actually kind of try and have a laugh with it. And again, obviously I bring powerful army lists and I am trying to win, but I don't think that we need to dislike each other during that process, right? It's just a game of toy soldiers.
Winning shouldn't come at the cost of enjoyment.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%.
And if neither of you are having fun, then why are you even doing it in the first place?
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's my thought on that.
No, I appreciate it, man. It's a good insight. But yeah, at the end of it all, I won. I didn't get Slay the Warlord because he kept his Warlord sort of scampering about. So it took me 5 turns to get to the point where he was sort of on the losing side of things, and the game ended after turn 5, and I wasn't able to kill his Warlord. Had it gone one more turn, I would have got his Warlord, but it is what it is. Can't have everything, can you?
Yeah, it was a good, solid match with a happy opponent. It sucks for his previous opponent, though. I think, I think in the final, I kind of agree with his opponent in the terms of that, like, you're there. This is like top tier gaming. You got to play it as straight as possible.
I agree.
But to go about it in such an underhanded way was unnecessary. He could have just gone and like, these are my feelings on the matter. Like, I'm going to talk to a TO about this situation, but I would still like to play you. Or is there anything you can do before I go to a TO?
I think the thing is with this sort of stuff is that I think there are levels of acceptability within certain WYSIWYG conversations, right? So if it is that you're using a Ravager and you've got it with Dark Lancers and you want to use it as disintegrators, fine. That seems fine to me because it's the same profile of vehicle, and if all of them are the same, if you go, every one of these has got disintegrators, they're all the same, I don't have to massively suspend my disbelief there. I don't, it's been explained to me at the start. I understand what's going on.
Yeah.
It's fair enough. If, for example, you were using... I really don't know. If you were using Hornets to represent Ravagers, was like, well, hang on, no. Like, that's ridiculous. We can't allow that. Or if you were using, Marnius Calgar to represent... I don't know, something else entirely like Abaddon. I don't know. That's where you start to go, all right, mate, no, we can't, this isn't appropriate. But I think if all you're talking about is a couple of little intricate details aren't exactly right, that seems fair enough to me. It's like his homunculus, his plastic homunculus comes with very specific types of weapons. 99% of your opponents don't know what those homunculus weapons are, right? Could you hazard a guess what they actually are?
Oh, God, no.
No, right? But that's fair enough to people, right? Because they look at it and go, oh, yeah, what weapons he's got, what's that do? Because you don't know what the needle pistol is or whatever is on there, or the weird flamery-looking toxic spreader or whatever it's called. You don't know what that stuff is. So you just, in those instances... You go, oh yeah, just tell me what he's got. Because it's like war gear stuff on a character. So you go, well, I don't really know what any of this stuff really is, so just explain it to me and we're all good. So why can you have something like that is broadly accepted and then turn around and be like, oh, but I can't let that slide on a Ravager? It's just like, again, the reason, as we deduced as we were playing the game, that guy did that to him is because his army list would have really suffered if he had the list that he wanted, that he'd actually written down and intentionally brought with him. So I think the guy that he played in the fourth game was literally just going, oh, I don't want to lose. But, is what it is. And I think fair play to Dan. He did the right thing. He was like, well, if that's how you feel about it, great, you win. Cool, well done. I'm going to go and rewrite my list, apparently. Cheers for that. So, yeah, I can't... the conduct of people during these events is always interesting, but I can't really fault Dan for turning around and going, I don't really want to play someone who's going to be that underhanded, and I think that's just how it goes.
I get to offer a counterpoint. If his other opponent had spent ages converting a load of his models up to be WYSIWYG, and then he turns up against an opponent who hasn't, I would be annoyed, and I'd do the English thing, and I'd probably tut and be like, "Oh, what's this?" But I wouldn't probably go to a judge and sort of dob them in.
I think again though, right? It's contextual. You turn up to a table to play a game against someone, and you look across and you see there's some inconsistencies. As long as those things are described and explained appropriately beforehand, and there is a degree of acceptability within what you're looking at, I think it's fair enough. But I do also agree with you, Phil. If you've made the time and the effort, I made sure that everything in my army is WYSIWYG. Literally everything is correct. So if I've done that and my opponent doesn't, I can understand why that would be difficult. But at the same time, as I say, it's all based on, as long as it's clearly understood. And I think the thing is, the only time where it gets really annoying or awkward or difficult is when people do, like the early instances where someone turned up with units of Stern Guard that he modelled with combi flamers, and then later in the game he's going, oh yeah, they got combi flamers. Like, if that's happening, then fair enough. And I understand that if you're doing these kind of things, it leaves it open to potentially happening. But I think even then, I feel like you do need to sort of have a conversation and give people the benefit of the doubt. And if you are frustrated, do voice your frustration. But I don't think you needed a TO, and you didn't need that course of events because, I mean, for the guy who did it, I don't know how he must have felt afterwards, but he must have felt pretty awful, because I would have done. If I turned around and done someone like that and got a win based on, the guy conceding to me because he didn't want to play me, I'd feel like an absolute arsehole. And
the thing is that kind of situation also skews the results. So that guy who got the free win, like, he potentially could have, maybe he should have lost. So then it meant that they would have gone the other way, which basically entirely changes the outcome of the whole event, on just the case of just a simple buy like that.
Yeah, I do get that.
I sort of feel like, on one hand, you shouldn't necessarily go off and get a TO to make them change their army, but you can't. If you're taking an army that isn't WYSIWYG, the rule pack has, since the GTs have been happening for over a year now, they've always said that. So you can't expect to be. You can't. I don't know. You just can't be annoyed if someone calls you out on it. It's like you should expect that could happen.
True.
And you've got to have a contingency in place if that does happen. And actually, at the GTs, I've noticed happen a lot more. When I was walking around, there's definitely, some stuff being proxied when it shouldn't have. And I've never really noticed that at events before. I mean, I guess it is a bit with all the soup that goes on. It's a bit hard to tell sometimes. But then other times, you can spot it.
I mean, it is a really interesting point. I suppose you are right. You shouldn't feel bad for calling someone on something that is in the rules pack. It just depends what the intention is. Like I say, I think the thing is,
if he was doing it just to win, then because he thought, it'll be a tough matchup, so I'll try and get past, then that's the wrong way to go about it. Yeah. But, I mean, at the same time, the opponent should have been like, I'm in the wrong, I'll still play you because ultimately you're there to have a good time. But I could see his frustration and being like, I don't want to do it if that's your attitude. But at the same time, he should have a slightly better attitude as well, to be like, it's my fault, I'm going to play you no matter what, and I'll try, I'll give me a few minutes to change my list and I'll still try and beat you.
I suppose my opinion's skewed by the fact that I got to play this guy and he was brilliant fun to play against, so I just sort of like, I have a bias because he was just a nice bloke that I got on with, so I sort of see that from his perspective. But I think you might be, no, you are right. I think, fair enough. Don't feel like you shouldn't call people out on this stuff, but at the same time, I do think there's varying degrees of it. I think there's a difference between, as I said, there's a difference between someone using a Ravager saying, oh, it's got this weapon, versus, say, using a Hornet to represent a Ravager or whatever. But again, I'm probably using two very different extremes almost to try and express that. So yeah. But anyway, I mean, look, Dan was a great opponent, really good game. Finished that one with a win. So at this point, I'm on 4 wins, 1 loss, and I'm going into round 6 to try and claim my 5th win. So any questions at all about round 5 before I start talking about round 6? Sorry.
No, we've covered it rather extensively.
Good.
Yeah.
Did you at this point know who else was sort of in the top, and if anyone had gone like undefeated, or were you unsure at this stage?
So at this point, there were only, to the best of my understanding, 2 people who had gone completely undefeated at this time. There was one guy who had a win and a draw, or rather 4 wins and a draw, and there were 2 guys with 5 wins to their names. And those 2 guys was a guy called Simon and a guy called Lawrence from Tabletop Tactics. So those 2 guys had finished with 5 wins apiece, so they were destined to play for the overall tournament winner. And then there were probably quite a reasonable pool of people with 4 wins, 1 loss. But yeah, I ended up playing against a very, very good player with a very good army, which was super interesting. So I played against a guy called Nick. I believe, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, because I think I've seen him on the Hellstorm Wargaming channel talking about his army before. I definitely saw him talking to Mikey after the tournament had concluded about the game that we had played, and I'm fairly confident I've seen him on the channel talking about his knight army before. But to fill you in, we were playing the mission where there are 5 objectives, and then you roll to see which one is the critical objective each turn. If you roll a 6, every objective is critical, so that means every objective is worth 2 victory points. He was running a Knight Castellan, a Knight Gallant, 2 Knight Armatures, and a Loyal 32, i.e. a bunch of Imperial Guardsmen. So a very, very optimised, powerful army list within the ITC format for certain. But interestingly, slightly flawed in the chapter approved missions, specifically this one as it turned out. Now, when I turned up to the board, this guy had already positioned all the terrain. And I have to admit, this board we were playing on was littered in terrain. Like, it was absolutely covered in it. And I said to him, I was like, are you sure you're happy with the terrain this way? And he goes, I just like jaunty angles. And I was like, all right, cool, so you want it like this. But I did say to him, I was like, okay, but like, I actually don't think this is incredibly advantageous for your army if you play it like this. And he's like, well, it is what it is, isn't it? We turned up, the board's got loads of terrain, it is what it is. And I was like, okay, fair enough. If you're happy with the setup, I'm happy with the setup. Let's roll the one roll to rule them all, as it were, the roll you want to lose. So we roll, and I win the roll off, and I get given my board edge. He chooses his table quarter, because we end up playing table quarters, or rather the type where you kind of draw a line through the middle and you can't go within 12 of it, so it's like the diagonal deployment type. Anyone know what that's called?
So Vanguard?
Vanguard, I think it's Vanguard.
It could very well be Vanguard.
Vanguard's the diagonal one, I think.
Yeah. So we were playing the diagonal one. Now, I set up my army, and then he starts setting up his army, and I'm doing the usual old nonsense that I love to do, where I'm setting it up defensively with the intention of making him go first, which is definitely what I did here. But he deploys his army, and I sort of say to him, like, mate, just so as I can clarify this stuff with you from the outset, your Castellan isn't going to be able to walk that way. So I pointed in a direction. He's like, oh, what do you mean? I was like, well, if you walk that way, your model's going to go off the table because you can't walk through that ruin, because you can't walk through walls. And he's like, oh, well, that only means I can walk through that way. And I was like, well, yeah, that is true. So, like, that's why I'm telling you now while you're deploying, so as you consider it as an option. And bear in mind, up to this point, I'd already clarified with him. So when we got to the table, I said to him, right, none of this terrain, or rather only 2 pieces of this terrain is Sector Mechanicus. Everything else is Cities of Death. So it's all the old style Cities of Death ruins. So I said, obviously, all these Cities of Death ruins were called Sector Imperialis, because if I don't agree that with you, technically you can't charge me when I'm on the second floor of these, because you can only do it when I'm in a piece of Sector Imperialis ruins terrain. But those are crates, and that's a bastion, and those are trees. Yeah, you're happy with all that? He's like, yeah, happy with that, great. So we've already agreed a bunch of stuff up front. I've been trying to be pretty transparent with him that, bear in mind, the Knight Castellan army and the Knight army in general is a very, very strong army that I've played against on many occasions. So I know all the tricks at dealing with it, because I have to learn them, because that's the only way you beat that army, is by knowing all the tricks. So I sort of was spelling out to him at the start, it's just be aware, I know what you want to try and do with this army, and I know how all the different ways that I'm going to try and stop it, so I'm trying to make you understand that I'm not going to sort of fall for any of the silliness. And anyway, he agrees all that, and then we set stuff up. So he goes first. So in the opening turn, he kills 1 unit of bikes and one... Does he kill 1 plane? No, he leaves 1 plane on like 1 wound. And then he charges his gallant up to try and get to one of the objectives and move stuff around. So in the first turn, we had actually rolled a 6. So all the objectives were worth 2. In correspondence to what he did in the opening turn, I proceeded to place some guardians on top of a crate with 1 guardian within 3 inches of the middle of that. I positioned a flyer to screen the gallant from being able to charge that 1 guardian. I then manoeuvred stuff into the middle of the board. I charged into an armature to gain control of another objective. So at the end of turn 1, I had killed a bunch of guardsmen. I hadn't killed his Knight Castellan yet, but I killed a bunch of guardsmen, getting me first strike. And I scored 4 out of the 5 objectives, earning me 8 points for that. So at the end of the first turn, I was already ahead 9-3, which was pretty significant to kick things off.
Solid. It was solid points difference.
Yeah, and I'd obviously positioned all my flyers to stop any of his other knights getting out of his deployment zone.
Yeah.
So in his turn 2, he manages to kill another plane with the Castellan. I vected his re-rolling 1s stratagem 2 turns in a row. So I was like not having that and then not having it again. So that massively hindered his ability to kill stuff. And then in my turn 2, I managed to kill his Castellan, which got me Slay the Warlord. I then still controlled 3 out of the 5 objectives, so then got another... I think I controlled 4 out of the 5 objectives still, so then got another... Because I think I got the one that was worth more as well that turn, so I got another 5 points for that. So, yeah, at that point I was on 15, and he was on... I think he was on 4 at that point, so it was 15-4. And then... He actually, in his turn 2, by the way, because he declared a charge using Devastating Reach against my Storm Guardians on top of crates, and I went, yeah, you can't do that. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, you can't do that. Do you remember that whole conversation we had at the start where we talked about Sector Imperialis, Sector Mechanicus? And he's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, that means you can't charge them when they're on crates. And he was like, what? And you could tell he knew that what I was saying was correct, but he didn't want to kind of back down. So he got the stratagem out, he read it, and said, see, look, it specifically references these. And then it's like, oh, yeah, well, but the crates now are just treated like hills or something, aren't they? I said, yeah, but like hills with vertical-facing walls that you can't place your model on, so you can't be within an inch. And he's like, well, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, it's a moot point anyway, because... my stuff's positioned in such a way as they're not within an inch of the edge of where you're trying to charge anyway. So even if you could place the model, which you can't, because you can't place the model physically on that thing, you wouldn't even be able to do it. And at that point, he was like, right, well, I'm quitting. I'm done. He was like, no offense to you, mate, but this army's ridiculous. I'm not playing anymore. And I was like, oh man, come on, dude. I appreciate it's not looking good, but like, I'd really hate it if you just, like, threw in the towel on me, because It's like the last game. You could still win, and he was like, no, I'm done. And then he started going, oh, I'll finish the turn, and then he actually sort of got back into it. So we actually got all 5 turns out. But yeah, I mean, to speak about the guy I played in Game 5 dealing with his guy in Game 4 and quitting, I did almost have someone quit on me in Game 6 because it was just going so badly for him. And, look, I can imagine after that game he was cursing me out because he probably was a bit like, I just lost to the Elder Flyer cheese, and the guy was using all these rules and being a real pain in the arse. So I do understand, right? Because I mean, again, last game of the GT finals, I'm potentially in contention for a podium finish. I'm like, I could get, in the top 3 with this win. So I was like, mate, I said, mate, under any other circumstances, under any other context, I'd play this way easier with you. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And if you don't understand or haven't researched what's bad about the Knight list, and you're just kind of ignoring the rules that have a negative impact on the list, I'm not surprised that you've won 4 games and lost 1 up to this point, because if you're only ever focusing on the strengths of the list and not acknowledging the weaknesses of it and playing around those, then, it is sort of what it is. So, yeah, I mean, I did feel bad for the guy because obviously it was an absolute bloodbath. I mean, he killed way more of my stuff than I killed of his, but I didn't care because I was so far ahead. By the end of turn 3, I think I was on 20 victory points to his 5, and it was like, well, unless you have the luckiest next couple turns, you're never going to bring this back. And that's where it just sort of went in the end. It was just that thing. So, but yeah, it was what it was.
It's funny because you think this is the grand tournament final. It's not a heat. And realistically, you got to think everyone in that room is there to win this event. Mm. So at no point are you justified in getting moody about someone knowing the rules. This event is supposed to encompass all parts of the hobby, and part of that hobby is knowing what your army does. And I don't know this guy. I'm not going to say it's I don't think he's going out in a way to cheat or anything like that. It's a case of if he's like this in the last game of this event, and he's got as far as he has, and he's talking to you like this, and he's acting in this kind of way, he's played 5 other games. What has he got away with in those games before? And should he have been in the position where he was if he'd played to the correct rules?
I mean, that is a lot of very heavy speculation there, right? Because I think credit where credit's due to him. The only stuff he got wrong was, well, he obviously knew all these rules. He just wanted me not to.
Yeah.
And the thing is Devastating Reach is stupid. It shouldn't be a stratagem. It should just be a thing they have. Also, as well as all of that, the problem is with Imperial Knights is that, in all honesty, I don't believe that the 8th edition rules really work for Knights, because the problem is with Knights are, if you're playing on a flat surface with no terrain, Knights as a rule set work great. The minute you introduce terrain into the game, Knights just become completely and utterly nullified as a threat, because all you have to do is stand on an inch-high crate, or a 2.5-inch high crate as it is in the case of the crates, and they can't do anything to you. And it's like, well, what is that? Or you just have to stand in the middle of a walled-off ruin. They can't get in. It's like, it's mad how little you need to actually understand the relationship between an Imperial Knight and terrain pieces to understand how you beat them. Because actually, if you're having a problem against Imperial Knight armies, genuinely spend some time reading the terrain rules. Spend some time reading the stratagems for Imperial Knights, and understand that they can't walk through walls. And the minute you get into that situation, you realise that Imperial Knights aren't scary at all. I mean, you've done this, Joe. You ran into Imperial Knights at a tournament where you played a mission and there was a huge castle in the middle.
Yeah. And it completely scrubbed me, basically.
Yeah.
Because I play against someone, and he was basically... He was like, I'm going to put all the objectives on buildings, which you can do, because those are the rules.
Well, back then,
Yeah, and I'm going to put the main objective on top of this building, and I'm going to stand on it, and you can't get to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, well... And then, because it's a big building in the middle of the table, your opponent can literally just dance around it, hiding. And your knight can't charge through it like a unit of infantry can. So, yeah, it's great. And it means like units like Captain Smash, for instance, like can land on the other side of this building, 9 inches away, can't be shot at, and can just charge straight through the ground floor and undisturbed.
Yeah. That is the thing, though, man. It's like Imperial Knights are not actually that good in this rule set, in my opinion. The Castellan is great. Like, don't get me wrong, it kills stuff, but I'm never worried when I see a Castellan, except in ITC, because normally they're backed up by loads of mortars hiding behind walls that you can't deal with, or guardsmen that you can't see running around claiming objectives. In that context, yeah, Castellans are a little bit worrying, but in like normal Warhammer 40,000, whatever. Like, I've never lost to a Castellan army ever in normal 40.
Also, not quite pro tip, but commas pro tip. If you lock down a Castellan on all 4 points with a Rhino, it can't leave combat, or with bike squads with storm shields, because it can only leave combat from infantry. So you'd be like, cool, you're stuck, not being able to do anything, with rhinos just bumping into your feet for the rest of the game.
That requires 4 rhinos to pull off.
Yeah, but... Oh well.
I feel like we've deviated massively from our original topic.
Yes, we have. There we go.
So how did you finish off that game? Did we finish talking about it?
Yes, yeah. So I won that game. Is the long and short of it. So yeah, very very successful game for me to close out the event. So in the end, I got a total GT score of 30. So that's 5 wins and 1 loss. I slayed the Warlord 5 times. I line broke 5 times, and I got first strike every time, so 6 first strikes. And in a 6-game event, I killed 7,854 points worth of stuff, which is a pretty healthy amount of stuff to have killed. As I say, in the end, I got 3 favourite game votes, which is obviously an incredible thing to have been given the fact that I was running an absolutely horrible Elder Flyer list. So to come away from the event with 3 favourite game votes is really, really fantastic. I really appreciate everyone that I played at the event. I think I had the good fortune of having some absolutely brilliant opponents. But the fact that 50% of the people I played felt like I was one of the best people they played all weekend is super nice, because, again, that army is not fun to play against, especially within that context, so that's really cool. But I didn't receive a single favourite or best painted army award, which has obviously led me to believe that, as I've speculated many times, I need to do a better job of painting my army, because if one person had given me a favourite army vote, I would have actually come 3rd. But there you go.
No.
But
as
did you actually come?
I actually came 5th. So in the end, the overall winner was a lovely gentleman by the name of Simon. I chatted to Simon very briefly during the event. Didn't get to play him, obviously, but Simon won with 6 wins, 0 losses. He beat Lawrence in the final game, which meant that Lawrence actually came 3rd. With Eddie from the Warhammer community or rules writing or publication team. Eddie from Warhammer TV back in the day came 2nd with 5 wins and a draw. So obviously Eddie did pretty well there. Eddie got
That was
5.
with his Gene Stealer cult, wasn't it?
Yeah, so he came second with Gene Stealer Cult. He got 5 best army votes and no favourite game votes, which I thought was really interesting because I always sort of assumed Eddie was like a super lovely guy, but the voting at the end would sort of suggest otherwise. But yeah, don't want to speculate on that side of things. But he didn't get any favourite game votes, but he did get favourite army, so fair enough. That got him second place. Lawrence got third. Bizarrely, I know it sounds really mad, and it wouldn't have really made a difference anyway, because the guy who came fourth, assuming all the scores were the same, would have probably still come third above myself. But I was saying, I was like, I really hope Lawrence beats Simon in the finals. And the only reason I was sort of saying that is because, as sad as the thing as it is to say, I think because Lawrence has a higher likelihood of getting lots of favourite game and favourite army votes, if he just came first overall, it kind of takes him out of that kind of next tier bracket, and then I would have potentially had the opportunity to have come higher up had he kind of gone off into the first place stratosphere. Because if you'd removed him from the mix, I would have come. It's basically based on the scores. If the guy Lawrence played in the last game, Simon played. If Simon had lost that last game to Lawrence, he would have actually fallen a fair way down, which again is a really interesting dynamic, right, for the tournament, because the two best players, the two guys with 5 wins, no losses, played each other in what is essentially the final, the winner takes all final. But had Simon lost, he probably would have finished like 7th. And it's like, wow, is that really a fair reflection of his ability? Do we need to move into like a knockout system when it gets to that upper echelons? Because all of a sudden, because I guarantee you, if I had been in that same position and won 5 games and lost none, but then lost in the last game, but then was completely taken out of contention for the top 3, I would be a bit miffed for that. But as it happened, because Lawrence always gets a lot of favourite games and favourite army votes, although he didn't get a super huge amount this time, but he got more than most. He finished third. But anyway, yeah, so he finished third. Then Italian chap by the name of Philip, who is relatively synonymous within the competitive scene for being a bit of a difficult individual to deal with. I've never had the privilege of playing him, so I'm basing this purely on speculation. I was chatting to him very briefly, and he seemed lovely to talk to, so I don't really necessarily feel like it's a fair thing to say that he's a horrible person to play against, but the general consensus in the scene is that he's a bit of hard work, but that may just be, I don't know, who knows. If I ever play him, I'll fill you in, but he came fourth, and there was your boy, Dan, in 5th place overall with 5 wins, 1 loss, and 3 favourite game votes. So, yeah, I mean, you know, whether it's really accurate to say it, I can technically claim I'm the 5th best 40k player. I don't know. Do you think I've got any sort of validity to that claim? I mean, admittedly, I suppose I do, but I feel a bit mad saying it because, you know, it seems a little bit arrogant to say the very least.
Right. It's one of those, like, you're within the Games Workshop competitive scene, you are the 5th best player this year.
For a finite period of time.
It's interesting that even the person who won the tournament, so the Tau player, within the Tau Facebook group, was basically written off as, oh, it's not ITC, it's not competitive. So take that as you will, as in terms of your playing ability. Basically, the Americans will not respect you because it's not ITC.
There you go.
Even though I think that's a completely flawed argument and is not indicative, because obviously it is still competitive. It's just a different set of rules because, like I said, they have their own meta because the rules favour a certain gameplay style. And I actually think the new chapter approved missions do a much better job at balancing the game than the ITC formats. Controversial as that might be.
Ooh.
The gloves are off. Come at me, ITC.
You really don't want them to, mate. Don't say that.
No.
Yeah, please leave me alone, ITC. Is what
Well,
you mean.
they're lovely chaps for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I genuinely, I mean, I play in ITC events all the time, and I actually like them. But the thing is again, it's very different when you play in ITC events in this country anyway, because we're just kind of plugging into certain aspects of it. So with the exception of like the LGT London Grand Tournament, where they've kind of created that sort of scenery scenario, it's still very random what sort of tables you're going to play on. Whereas I saw it like the LVO, there were much more formulaic layouts of tables, which again sort of adds a nuance on top as well, because again, it just everything creates its own interesting meta. But yeah, the Elder Flyer list is super strong in normal 40k. Yeah.
Well, fun fact: the LGT, they've got their own special scenery being made. I think it's like TT Combat, and every board in the building is exactly the same.
Yeah.
The exact same layout and the exact same terrain, and but literally everything is to the point, exactly the same.
Which just seems so boring.
Yeah, competitively, it makes a lot of sense, because every game is exactly the same. It all comes down to army list and player skill. But that doesn't make for a fun experience. Some people will enjoy it because that's what they do enjoy. They're like, I'm here to prove that I am the best. But it kind of sucks a lot of the character from the game. Because then you end up in situations where there's going to be a lot of the same list, like almost identical. But then that's I kind of prefer the Games Workshop way of things, because a Tau army won the event. Like, everyone's like, Eldar or Castellans, Knight list, they're going to win. And then in the very end, this little Eldar player, the little engine that could, snuck in and took it all.
You said little Eldar player, but you meant to say little Tau player, I'm sure.
Little Tau player, yes.
Was he the one that had all the Pramas?
Yeah.
He was. I do believe, and I could be mistaken, that the Warhammer Live, like the Twitch stream, is going to be doing a rundown of the top 10 lists, which would be interesting if they do that, because obviously you'll get featured as well. It'd be great to see what everyone else was running. And obviously we spoke to Lawrence and we saw his army, and it was very similar to yours, but with a bit of a twist.
Did he run scatter bikes? I actually never saw what he was running.
I'm not sure. I got the impression he wasn't, but I could be mistaken.
I got the impression he wasn't.
He was on the stream, I think, twice. So
I haven't
did get posted.
Yeah, I haven't got around to watching that yet. That's the other thing as well, really. I don't understand. I mean, admittedly, it's probably related to the fact my army looks terrible, but I never know what it is that I need to do to get on that live stream again. It's
You need to play with an army that I painted, clearly.
Well, that's that was the only time I've ever been on that live stream, was when I was playing with an army Joe painted for.
Well, there you go. Well, I think the problem was, obviously, why feature your army when they could feature Lawrence's? Because the lists were so similar, and I hate to say it, his was a lot better painted than yours.
I wouldn't regret saying that at all, mate. That is just a matter of fact. Whether he actually did paint it or not, I suppose, is another thing. But
I do believe he paints his own Eldar armies. I think the rest of his stuff's all done by Siege Studios.
Okay.
But I know he's very passionate about painting his Eldar and Dark Eldar.
Oh, there we go. Well, good for him. I mean, look, long story short, I think it was a really great weekend. I was hugely grateful that Phil and Richie and Sean was about to kind of, join me for the weekend as well, because, again, having been the only one of our group, as it were, to qualify, I was definitely a little bit kind of, not anxious as such, but a little bit kind of apprehensive, I suppose, of going up there by myself and just kind of being on my top the whole time. But as it was a really, really fun weekend. I mean, going up to Warhammer World is always amazing fun. I can't wait to do it again. I just think they're just always really great weekends, especially when you get to spend it with such fantastic friends as you fine chaps. So yeah, no, I'm looking forward to when it comes around again. Obviously, we're playing in Heat 2 of the Grand Tournament 2019 season. So yeah, let's see if I can do better next year, or this year, as it is.
I'll be happy just to qualify for once, you know. Third time's a charm.
You'll get there, buddy. You'll get there. You just gotta... Who knows? You know, Phil qualified. If Phil could do it, you could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a bit of a pass because I only qualified because I got favourite game and army votes, which helped significantly.
Yeah, that definitely doesn't hurt.
I'm going to have to double the efforts of painting on my Deathwatch army then.
That's it, mate. That's it. If it's even going to be Deathwatch by then, you'll probably be onto your 5th army list of the year by August, surely.
Well, no, I promised myself that my army for this year will be Deathwatch, and it will be pure Deathwatch. Although I imagine if I get, because I've got my passion project of the Black Legion going on now. So it depends on whether I can get that sorted out in time.
Yeah.
But I doubt.
Pure Deathwatch and Assassins and a Knight.
No. Super.
Pure Deathwatch and Assassins and a Knight. Come on now, you know that's what you're going to add.
No.
I did notice.
I could borrow one of my knights back though. So. One of my old knights.
I did notice there were a lot of people taking their sort of 85 points in reserve for an assassin at that tournament. And there were even a few people taking like 3 or even 4 assassins.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, in my last game, he actually had 3 assassins. He had the Kaladas, the Vindicare, and the Caluxus.
Yeah, I spoke to one guy who was running an Imperial Guard. Was it all Imperial Guard? I think it was mostly Imperial Guard, but he had, I think it was like 4 or maybe even 5 assassins, and he had 2 Evisors and 2 Vindicares, as well as one of each of the other 2. I think the idea was that he was... I can't remember what I think he was maybe taking 4 of them, 2 of the doubles, and then maybe spending an extra CP to get one of the Calidus or Caluxus. I think that was his strategy, which seemed like a lot of points to spend on assassins.
Also, as well, I just want to mention for Joe's benefit after our episode talking about assassins, the Caluxus assassin, the anti-Psyker assassin, Joe, came in and it shot at my Farseer, and then it charged my Farseer. How well do you think it did?
Well, I kind of thought this is a setup, because you know that I wanted to have killed that Farseer. Just killed him dead on the spot. But part of me feels like he did absolutely fudge all.
He did nothing. Absolutely nothing. The Farseer actually managed to hit him once and did 3 wounds to him in combat.
Well, that's great.
So he did, literally, the thing came in, hit it, but the guy can still take invuns against all his shots. So he did. And then he charged it, and then the guy goes, I've got a punch or something, and did nothing. And then the Farseer managed to roll 1-6 and went, I wound you on 2s, 4 up invun, and he failed that, and I went, cool, D3 wounds. Oh, you take him 3. Yay.
It's funny really, because like the Farseer is probably one of the very few Psykers in the game that actually has an invulnerable save.
True, I will give you that. But the anti-Psyker assassin turned up and did nothing.
What was he wounding the Farseer on? Is it
he was
tougher for him to kill him because you're toughness 5?
No, toughness 4. So he was wounding it on 4s. With his speculum thing, he was wounding on 3s because it's strength 5, I believe.
You would have thought it should just be, I wound you on a 2-up because you're a Psyker.
Oh, yeah.
Because all the others do pretty much a 2-up wound on like infantry.
Oh, yeah. It's almost like the Caluxus assassin is terrible.
I love him. He's great. You'll all
Well, there we
have
go.
room.
Well, I reckon we've talked enough about that. That was my GT finals. 5th best 40k player in the world, I reckon. Yeah, fair statement.
England.
Totally.
No,
On
no,
that
Joe.
day.
There was some Italian people there, a Spanish fella.
Alright, in Europe.
Nah, the world. I'm going worldwide. 5th best player in the world, and very humble and very smart.
You're like Pitbull, Mr. Worldwide.
Mr. Worldwide. But there you go. No, it was a great event. I can't wait to do it all over again this year. I'm definitely going to focus on trying to paint it up a bit better, do a few more highlights, try and up my game in terms of the fidelity of the army, just to make it a little bit more compelling from a sort of visual perspective, to try and get a few more points out of it. Because, yeah, had I painted a nicer looking army, who knows where I could have ended up.
Fingers on buzzers, everyone, because it's time for the end of the show quiz.
Hello and welcome to the Lookout Sir End of Podcast quiz. This is the first time we're doing this quiz, so hopefully it all goes very well and is enjoyable for you guys at home as well as our studio audience, as it were, of Philip, Dan and Joe, who have logged into our little app we've set up for this quiz today to test out for the first time. So we will be having 10 questions asked by me, the quizmaster, Richie, back by unpopular demand to the podcast.
Tell us how you really feel, Rich.
So we're testing this out. We're going to have 10 questions, and our players will each buzz in. I will know the order, and I will let you at home know who is going to be answering in which order. And we'll have some sort of little gaps in there, so you can play along as well if you're listening, and try and get the highest score. Can you do as well as Dan, Philip, or even Joe? There's only one way to find out, and that is to play. Well, everyone can take part. Everyone has equal opportunity to win.
There you go.
So I have to say, I love your professional voice as well.
Oh, thank you.
It's good, isn't it? You can really lay it on thick.
You should read audiobooks for a living, Richie.
Oh, thank you very much. Or I could do a podcast on my own. Who knows?
You could do, mate. You could do. Didn't you used to do that really humorous kind of reading rap music in a kind of posh British voice type of thing?
I did, yeah. So yeah, with reading rap lyrics as if they were an audiobook.
There you go.
That was very fun.
There you go. Maybe you could do some of that later. Who knows?
Just licensing rights, I think, became a problem.
Ah, yeah. No, that will probably stand in your way.
Yeah. Okay, so we as I said, we have 10 questions for the guys today, and they are in 2 categories, because I wrote 20 questions, but they only want 10. So we're going to do 7 questions from our category of chaos, and 3 questions from a category on a test out called shenanigans.
Ooh.
So we're going to start off with chaos. Now all the guys are going to have the opportunity to buzz in when they think they have the right answer, and I will know the order. And they'll have the opportunity to answer them, and there's plenty of prizes to be won, or at the very least, points and bragging rights. So you guys all ready? Any questions about the format, or how this is going to work?
Well, I thought we had different sounding buzzers. Is that a thing? Do you want to introduce each of the different sounding buzzers?
Well, we can try and see how that sounds.
Well, there you go. There you go.
One of you can buzz in first. Let's say, Dan, you buzz first.
I will buzz first. Here we go.
Thank you. Thank you, Master.
That's a beautiful sounding buzzer right there. What a beauty.
Okay, I didn't hear any buzzers, so it's good to know. you didn't even buzz on the website, so this
No,
made
Rich, the trick is there, you see, is what I'm actually doing is I'm pretending that a buzzer went because we haven't added in the sound in editing.
Oh, all
you
right.
see what I did there? It's a clever little thing. So yeah, that was why I sounded a bit disingenuous and don't actually know what my buzzer sounds like. But, it's fine.
So you'll fix it in post.
I'll fix it in post. That's the whole thing. I'll also somehow mysteriously become the winner. So, so when you told Joe everyone has an equal chance. No, I will be winning.
You'll just re-edit my voice so it says that you were the winner.
Yeah, exactly. I'll edit your voice so it says exactly as many questions as I got right, and then I'll chop out all the questions I got wrong and be like, there you go, win.
This quiz will have 7 questions.
There you go. So that was my buzzer, we assume.
We assume, okay. Joe, would you like to do your buzzer?
Yes, I am pressing my buzzer now. Well, isn't that?
That's such an appropriate sounding buzzer for you, Joe.
Totally.
Excepting, obviously, this is the same scenario there, and I just thought, I'll try and make out like we're actually hearing it. Although we agreed, didn't we, that it was going to be the sound of a pot rattling for you.
Yeah, I think that is wholly appropriate.
Well, there we go.
I am the rustler.
And for the final buzzer, Phil.
And
Let's hear your buzzer.
Okay, this is my buzzer.
Thanks! Bayonets!
Glorious. Sounds great.
I mean, you know,
Nothing says Phil quite like that sound.
Exactly. For the purposes of this as well, actually, just to say that Richie knows the order and we're going to sort of edit it all together, should we turn the sound off of buzzin.live so as we don't have weird background noises when we buzz in?
Oh, dear God, please.
I don't know how. I don't even know how that works. If I can turn it off or not.
We turn it off on our side.
Okay.
My luggles can't take that kind of abuse.
All right, Rich. Assuming we've all turned off the sound, when you're ready, buddy.
Okay. For the first of the bi-weekly Lookout Sir End of Podcast quiz, question 1.
Question number 1.
Question 1. Abaddon the Despoiler has finally arrived in Vigilus. It would be 80 days, they said, it would take for him to arrive. But when did that 80-day countdown begin?
Thank you. Thank you,
You want
Master.
the exact date?
I want the exact date at the beginning. The first buzz-in is Joe. What do you say,
80
Joe?
days ago.
That's it's completely incorrect because it's been a few days since he was announced. So, good effort, but not the answer we were looking for.
It's whenever LVO was.
Well, that's not an answer. I needed a date, Joe, but I appreciate the effort there. But let's go on to our second buzzer, which was Dan.
I'm going to say it was Friday, the 4th of January.
Friday, the 4th of January is also incorrect.
Oh!
Phil,
Are we doing closest date?
at this point, we might as well do closest.
I'm going to say December the... Ooh, maybe...
I assume you're taking time because you're not Googling it.
No, I'm just trying to think. I'm going to say December the 20th. I thought it was...
Even you know what? Even if you came first, we'd probably have given you the answer was December 15th. Was when Harken Worldclaimer said he would in 80 days the War Master would return.
There you go.
I can't believe that was before Christmas.
Yeah,
Wait, what?
'cause it was when the Vigilus book came out.
Did Vigilus come out
Just
before
last year.
Christmas?
Yep.
Crikey, time is an enigma to me. It's madness.
So after question 1, Phil's on 1 point.
Woo!
Well done, Phil.
On to question 2.
Question number 2.
What is the full name of Abaddon the Despoiler? Obviously not the Despoiler bit, but what's his actual name?
You need to reset the buzzer.
You need to be I'm hammering the button.
I reset the buzzer.
I'm pressing the button.
Thank you. Thank you, Master.
Whoever came first through was Dan, according to the list.
Well, I think Joe definitely tried to get it in there before.
Okay,
we
well,
I'll
Joe,
let Joe have it.
Joe, you have the floor is yours. What is Abaddon's full name?
He's Ezekiel Abaddon.
I'll give you that. It's Ezekiel.
Ooh.
Ezekiel. There's no H in it.
What is
It's
it?
not German.
It's Ezekyle.
Okay.
So it's not quite Ezekiel, but that's I would say that's a fair pronunciation of it. And that's correct, so you have a point.
Well done, Joe.
Now going to remember to reset the buzzers.
There you go.
All right.
Well done, mate. Well done.
Question number 3. Fingers on buzzers. What was the original name of the Black Legion?
Thank you.
First up, we have Phil.
Oh!
Ooh. Well, the original name was the Lunar Wolves. If
That
you're
is-
going really far back.
That
Otherwise
is
it's
correct.
not-
Lunar Wolves is the correct answer.
Curse you, Phil. I buzzed that one.
It would have been more dramatic if you said the Sons of Horus, but we'll take the correct answer.
Technically, it was started by a World Eater, a Thousand Sun, a Emperor's Children, and a Sons of Horus.
Whatever, Joe.
Yeah,
Just say
the answer's lunar wolves. There.
Joe, you're starting to sound like Ricky Gervais in The Office, where he was talking about Spock being half Vulcan, half human. Don't become that guy.
Yeah.
Okay, now going back a bit lore-wise to a previous edition. Just before Cadia fell, which special character from the rules did Abaddon kill by crushing their spine? First buzz was Joe.
Is it Creed?
That is incorrect. It was not Creed. Next buzz is Dan.
So, I believe that he crushed the spine of... Oh no, I'm wrong. I'm totally wrong. I was going to say Commissar Yarrick. He didn't do it to Commissar Yarrick, did he? I'm wrong.
Is that if your answer's Commissar Yarrick? You're wrong. It wasn't Commissar Yarrick.
Ah, curse my life.
I don't even know if Yarrick was there.
No, he was. I'm sure he... Well, no, was he not? Oh god, now you're asking.
Final
No,
evidence
he gets around.
is Phil, the
Is it?
Creed guy. Who was it? Who did Abaddon kill?
Is it a guy called Dreekov?
No, it wasn't Dreekov either. You've all okay. We can either you all get it wrong, or we can reset the buzzers and you can have another go. How do you want to do it?
Tell us what it was.
We all got it wrong.
You all got it wrong. The answer was Colour Sergeant Kell.
Oh, that guy!
Speak is the standard bearer of Creed.
Yes, he was. He defended Creed, pushing him into a Valkyrie, and then Abaddon crushed his spine in retaliation. But for as well, actually, to be fair, no points for it, but as a bonus question, where is Castellan Creed now?
Oh, can we buzz?
If you like,
Thanks! Bayonet!
Phil.
He's trapped in something like a tesseract of a Necron Lord.
Which is correct. He is in Trazen's collection.
Yeah.
Ooh, Phil with the knowledge. No points, but knowledge.
No points, but knowledge.
Okay.
Okay, on to question number 5. How has Abaddon's stat line changed in the new Codex?
Thank you.
First Miss Dan.
Thank you, Master.
They gave him +1 toughness and +1 wound.
That's incorrect.
Oh no!
Next is Joe.
It's +1 wound, +1 attack.
That's also incorrect.
Ah!
So Phil, you have a gimme.
Ooh, I'm gonna say +2 wounds and +1 attack.
It was +1 strength, toughness, and wounds. I've got it wrong.
You're all wrong. It was +1 strength and +1 wound.
I don't know. I've not seen it. That was a total guess.
Oh, of course, because he's got. Oh yeah, no, they didn't increase his toughness because he always has Mark of Nurgle, doesn't he? Ah!
Yeah, he's always had toughness 5, but he has now strength 5.
Oh, poo.
Okay, this one's gonna. Okay, for this one. Okay, this one's just gonna be fun to see who you can get. It's still only 1 point for it because you've got to get all of it right. So resetting the buzzers.
Yep.
Next question. Can you name all of the faction keywords that Abaddon the Despoiler has?
Thank you. Thank
First
you,
up is
Master.
Dan.
So he has Chaos, Heretica Astartes. He has the Black Legion. Are we including his kind of status, i.e., Chaos Lord, HQ, all of that stuff as well, or is it
No, because those aren't faction keywords.
faction keywords? Okay, fine. So he has Black Legion, Heretica Astartes. He has Chaos, and he has Chaos Undivided, I would say.
That's incorrect.
Ah, I can't ever get anything right.
Next up is Phil.
Oh, he's gonna have Chaos, Black Legion, Heretical Astartes, and then rather than go with Undivided, I'm gonna say he's got all the gods. So Khorne, Nurgle, Slanesh, and Tzinch.
That is correct.
No, I can't. I should have gone with that. I just thought I was gonna say like World Eater, Emperor, but I was like, no, that can't be right. But then would they give him all the gods? Of course they did.
They did give him all the gods. Okay. next question, which is question seven.
Yeah,
Question 7. For this, we're going to have to do it like countdown. So I'm going to ask you a question, and then you can each buzz in, and in the order you buzz in, you say how many you can guess right from the question. If that's going to that'll make sense very shortly. But basically, you're all going to buzz in, and then in the order that you buzzed in, you'll say how many answers you can give me to the question. And the question is, how many legions, including renegade legions, but not including the Fallen, from the Chaos Codex, can you name?
Thank you. Thank you, Master.
First up is Dan. Dan, how many do you think you can name? Bear in mind that the way this will work is you say how many you can name, and then next up is Phil. If Phil can name, says he can name more than you, he can try and name all of them and win.
So I can say the traitor legions as well, not the traitor legions, the renegade legions as well. Right?
Including the renegade legions, yes, but only the ones that are in the book, the Chaos Codex.
I'll go with 8.
You're going to say 8.
Yeah.
Phil, can you name more than 8?
No chance.
How about Joe? Do you want to try?
I'm going to go 9.
Joe's going to go 9.
Are we going to hear the flipping of the pages as Joe flips through the book?
I don't actually have the Chaos Codex because I ditched the old one, knowing the new one's out on Saturday.
Joe's claiming 9. Let's see if you can do it. Not you. You're Dan.
Have I got
Dan. You're not a Joe. Joe's going. Joe says he can do more than you, so he's going to go first.
All right, Joe, go for it, mate.
Right, so Black Legion.
Correct.
Emperor's Children.
Correct.
Word Bearers.
Yep.
Iron Warriors.
Yep.
Red Corsairs.
Yep.
The Damned.
There is none called the Damned.
Oh, you ruined it.
I ruined it on 6.
So you've named 5. So Dan, if you can name 3 more, you win.
If I can name 3 more than the ones he's named. So what did he name? Black Legion.
Yep.
Iron Warriors. Emperor's Children? Did he actually say Emperor's Children?
Yeah, Emperor's Children, World Eaters, and Word Bearers.
World Eaters and World Bearers. So he said Black Legion, Emperor's Children, Word Bearers. Okay, fine.
No, sorry, and Crimson Slaughter.
Yeah, so one of those he didn't say, did he?
No, we're not going to include that one.
That's fine. That's fine. So in addition to the ones, so Joe said Word Bearers, blah 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 blah. Okay, cool. So you've got the Red Corsairs.
Yep.
The Crimson Slaughter.
Well, Joe's already said the Crimson Slaughter.
I don't think he said the Crimson Slaughter.
I think he did.
Yeah.
Did you say the Crimson Slaughter, Joe?
I said the Red Corsairs. I didn't say the.
Oh, so fine. So sorry. The Crimson Slaughter. The Alpha Legion.
With the apologies to everyone back home, we didn't plan this that far in ahead.
Well, exactly.
But you can all play along.
So there you go. Yeah, the Emperor's Children, the World Eaters, the Alpha Legion, the Crimson Slaughter, the Red Corsairs, the Black Legion, the Iron Warriors, the Word Bearers. I think that's 8, isn't it? I mean,
yes. How many more can you get?
Oh god, I can only get 8 because I can't remember what the pink ones are called that aren't Emperor's Children. Obviously you can't have thousands.
There's a really obvious one none of you have said. I say obvious.
Is it not Black Legion? We said Black Legion.
We're not including Thousand Sons of Death Guard, are we?
We're not including those.
No.
There's one of the non-renegades that you haven't named yet.
Really? Was that? So we have Word Bearers.
World Eaters.
I said World Eaters. Anyway, long story short, then which one did we not mention?
You didn't mention the Night Lords.
Oh, the Night Lords!
The Night Lords was one of the easy ones. The other renegades you could have had were the Purge, the Scourged, the Brazen Beasts, or the Flawless Host.
That was the one I couldn't remember the name of. The Flawless Host. There you go.
So
one
Dan,
for me.
1 point for Dan. So as we move into the shenanigans round, Dan and Joe are in second place with 1 point, whereas Phil is in the lead with 3.
Ooh.
How did this happen?
Because Phil's the most knowledgeable member of this, this group.
Yeah.
He's not a moderator on those Krieg forums for nothing.
Okay, so for the final 3 questions, this is part of the shenanigans round, where I will read a rule from the game, which I've made, which is slightly different than how that may or may not have something wrong with it. You have to say what if you think this is what the shenanigan is, and what's wrong with the rule.
So have you changed the rule yourself?
Yes, I've changed the rule. It began from the idea that mostly Eldar stratagems aren't quite as good as people think they are, or rather, people can easily make them out to be better than they really are.
I don't know what you're possibly talking about there. You can prove nothing.
So, shenanigan number 1. Is this a shenanigan or not? The Avatar Resurgent stratagem is the rule that at the end of the fight phase, you can return the Avatar to life within 3 inches of where it fell with D6 wounds.
Thank you. Thank you, Master.
Is that true or false? And I've got to check the buzzers. Dan has buzzed in.
It's false. It's the end of any phase in which he dies.
This is perfect because actually it was false, but not for the reasons you said.
Ah, right, okay. What was
Phil?
the reason I said? Because he's within.
Because it's at any phase. No, Phil, what do you say?
I'm going to say you've got to make a dice roll.
Nope.
No, you don't have to make a dice
This is
roll.
Zelda, you don't make a dice roll. It just happens.
It is free command points though, so you know.
It is 3 command points.
D3 mortal wounds.
Nope. So you're wrong. The specifics were that it's at the end of. It's not at the end of the fight phase. It's the immediately following when the Avatar is slain in the fight phase, and the unit doing its attacks is finished.
Oh, so,
You have to-
so it can't get up from being shot.
Nope, it cannot get up from being shot. It can only be done in the fight phase, and it can only be done immediately when the unit attacking it has finished its attack. So if it's fighting 2 units, you can't wait until the end of the fight phase. It has to be immediately after the unit's finished attacking.
Why would you get into combat with it? That would be madness anyway.
But yeah, you don't have to roll a dice. It just comes back to life.
That's really interesting because me and Joe played against someone with an Avatar in a doubles tournament, and he was just getting up all the freaking time. From
If
everything.
he was using the Avatar Resurgent, it can only be used in the fight phase.
Wow, okay, well there you go. I thought it was at the end of any phase, because that's what the person did to me. I don't use an Avatar, so I don't ever really think to double check that.
Next up, we have...
Reset the buzzers, please.
Resetting the buzzers, okay. Resetting the buzzers. I'm sorry for... also apologies, Phil. You might not be able to guess this one.
Is the theme all Elder stuff?
It's not actually. I tried to balance it out.
You tried not to just single me out as not knowing my codex.
This is regarding the stratagem Machine Spirit Resurgent. So this is the stratagem that you can use. You can use the stratagem at the beginning of any turn. Pick a friendly Imperial Knight from your army until the end of that turn. Use the top row of the damage table, regardless of how many wounds it has left. This ends when the model is reduced to 0 wounds. Which part of that is the shenanigan?
Sorry,
Just
say it again.
So, Machine Spirit Resurgent, 1 CP, use a stratagem at the beginning of any turn. Pick a friendly Imperial Knight from your army. Until the end of the turn, use the top row of the damage table, regardless of how many wounds it has left. This effect ends when the model is reduced to 0 wounds. First buzz in is Joe.
Well, I actually buzzed in too early. I actually buzzed in before you finished, but it's you said it ends when it's reduced to 0 wounds.
Yes.
It's basically it ends at it's until the next phase. Well, then it ends at the start of the next turn.
Well, it's for the remainder of the turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that wasn't the part that was the shenanigan. So you're wrong.
Oh.
I'll say again for the... Yeah, well, Phil, you're next.
I was going to say, because you said friendly Imperium Knights, didn't you?
I said friendly Imperial Knight.
Yeah, I was wondering if it specifies it's a Mechanicum Knight.
That's correct, Phil gets another point. It's only Mechanicus Knights. Not any Imperial Knight, only Mechanicus Knights.
I had that one figured, Phil. You diddled me.
Got to be quick on the fingers.
I was like, no, I swear that's a Questo Mechanicus stratagem. But there you go. There you go.
Okay, next one. Final question. So, to be honest, Phil's already won.
Oh, Phil.
So
there's got to be some tension.
This last one should be worth 10 points then.
Yeah. Well, last one takes it all. How many points Phil got? 4?
This last one, Phil's got 4. You guys can't catch up.
Well, there we go. We could make this one worth 3, and then we could go to a tiebreaker question potentially. Or Joe could win.
I'm good, thanks.
No, yeah, you just want to take the win. Are you sure you don't play Elder?
So, final question.
Oh, can you reset the buzzers as well?
Resetting the buzzers. Okay, resetting the buzzers.
I'm back again now.
Where were you?
My internet connection was like, you're not connected to the internet.
But you were.
But you're still there, yeah.
Yeah, it's super weird.
There you go. Anyway, go on then. Question
For our
number 10.
final shenanigan question. Stratagem Agents of Vect for 4 CP. You use a stratagem after your opponent has spent CP to use a stratagem, but before it has been resolved. Roll a d6. On a 1, your opponent's stratagem is resolved as normal. On a 2 to 5, your opponent's CPs are refunded and the stratagem is not resolved and cannot be attempted again this phase. Or on a 6, the stratagem is not resolved, cannot be attempted again this phase, and the CPs are lost. This cannot be used on stratagems which happen before the game or during deployment. Can you spot the shenanigan in there? First buzzer in is Phil.
I think instead of it being on a 6, it's on a 5 and a 6.
You're wrong. It's incorrect. Next is Phil.
Next
Sorry,
is Phil.
no, Phil's really heckling us. Dan is next.
What did you say again? You said, talk me through the whole thing again, one last time.
Okay. Agents of Vect.
Mm-hmm.
4 CP.
Mm-hmm.
Use this after your opponent has spent CP to use a stratagem, but before it has been resolved.
Mm-hmm.
Roll a d6.
Mm-hmm.
On a 1, your opponent's stratagem is resolved as normal.
Mm-hmm.
On a 2 to 5, your opponent's CP are refunded, and the stratagem is not resolved and cannot be attempted again this phase. On a 6, the stratagem is not resolved, cannot be attempted again this phase, and your opponent's CPs are lost.
Mm-hmm.
This cannot be used on stratagems which happen before the game or during deployment.
So you can use it on things during deployment, you just can't use it on things before the game.
Is that your answer?
Well, it's also that technically the everything else was right, so that's the only thing that I could... Because again, they specifically state that it can't be done on things before the game, but deployment is part of the game, so you could technically argue that's a thing. But I also wouldn't use it against someone doing something in deployment, but technically you probably can if it's... Because that's not before the game, technically, so I'll go with that.
Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
Okay, well, you were nearly at the correct answer. Joe, would you like to have a go?
I haven't got a clue. I've never had it yet.
The correct answer was there is no shenanigans. That's literally the strategy.
That was going to be my second guess.
It's just that nonsense.
Well, the thing you threw me off by asking it because I was like, that just sounds exactly like what it is.
Yeah,
so I was
but it's still Phil.
So what you're saying is it's just shenanigans.
It's just pure shenanigans. Yes, that's just my dig at the Agents Effect.
There you go. Although you don't particularly mind a plan 1,000 years in the making for whatever it's called for the Gene Stealer Cult.
But as that question was a little bit, well, that stratagem works differently. But as that was kind of a trick question, I'll throw in one final one.
The bonus question worth 5 points.
Bonus question worth what the hell? Let's say it's worth 3 points.
Yeah, take that, Phil.
Phil will now be keen to buzz in as soon as he can. Okay. Here is this isn't relating to a stratagem, it's relating to a certain unit. And I'm going to make a statement and you have to tell me if it's true or false. And why. It's either of the above. Death Watch bikers can move onto the upper floors of a roads. Well, Phil was quick to buzz in there. Phil, what's wrong with that statement?
It's true. They can, because of the wording of... Basically, they are an infantry, and they only count as being a bike for when they're embarking onto a transport.
I can't really accept that.
What? That's totally it.
Next to buzzing was Dan.
Well, you see, because obviously the biker unit in Death Watch can't do it because they're just bikers. If you happen to have a bike as part of your kill team, then they gain the infantry keyword because of the fact they're part of the kill team and can shenanigans their way onto terrain. But if you're referring to them as a bike unit, they can't do it.
You're almost there.
Oh, I'm always there.
Joe, can you give a more specific answer?
Oh, he's diddled me.
So if they're part of a Deathwatch kill team, they
Is he going to do me on the flipping word Deathwatch? Is that
they lose the bike keyword. So the whole unit is classed as an infantry unit.
I'm going to let you split the points 50-50 because neither of you had the exact answer, which was that Deathwatch bikers, you both were correct that Deathwatch bikers can't go onto the upper floors of ruins because they are bikes. However, Deathwatch veterans, they're not Deathwatch kill team is not a unit. Deathwatch veterans, however, can have various different types of models in the squad, and that was the answer I was looking for. The Deathwatch veterans, so I give you both half a mark, which means the final scores are 4 points to Phil and 2.5 to Joe and Dan. So the winner of by a country mile, if we forget the shenanigans on the final question, of the first of the bi-weekly Lookouts end of podcast quiz is Phil.
Yeah. I'll have to come back
Well done.
to try and keep the crown.
Speech.
You can now all go home happy.
There you go. Well, there you are.
Well, I am at home.
Well, I hope you all learned something. If there's any feedback or from the audience and the listeners who think that some of those answers were wrong, I hope they weren't, because that'll be very embarrassing.
That's it.
But if not, I'll be sure to mention it next week.
I swear the unit entries in a kill team are veterans, but the unit is called a kill team.
No, you used to be in the old Codex.
Oh,
this one they're called veterans.
Yes, because when it was Deathwatch kill team, they were individual things. When Deathwatch veterans is a data sheet, which is why they don't add the keyword for biker when you add a bike to the squad.
Well, there we go. More quiz questions for a later time. I'm sure Rich will find the answers and present them to us again in the Lookout Sir 40k end of show quiz.
Yeah, but there's a whole lot. Next week's one is already written.
Oh, well, exactly, man. Exactly. Can't wait. That was actually really fun. I enjoyed that.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. If there's any requests for topics from the listeners, let me know.
Exactly.
I can see them all wanting a Krieg special segment just for future reference. Thank you.
I really want that you lose, Phil. I'm just saying.
Phil, I'm going to go down to Toys R Us. Oh, I can't go to Toys R Us anymore. They closed. I'll go to Smith's Toys and get some kind of toy WWE belt and, make it into a championship and post it to you. And then you can defend it from here on in. Or we can make one out of cardboard, maybe. It could be great.
Excellent. Sounds good.
Or would you want a wrestling belt or would you want a crown?
I think Crown and Scepter would be
Crown and Scepter.
Yeah, go all out.
Or you only get the Scepter when you win 3 weeks in a row.
Oh, yeah, there you go. It can increase. It starts
because that's the streak.
What's that random ball thing that the Queen has with the cross on it? It looks like the holy hand grenade, but isn't a holy hand grenade.
Isn't that like an incense burning thing or something?
I don't know.
Like some kind of bomby knocker.
Yeah.
There's a weed you don't hear
she
enough.
burns a lot of incense at home.
Yeah, exactly. She loves her weed. The Queen.
When Phil stunk the house out.
It's called the Sovereign's Orb.
There you go. Look, there you go. This is all good quiz fodder that we're losing out on.
Next pub quiz I go to, I can't wait for that question to come up.
There you go. Because I'm sure it will. Here's the thing, though, Joe. You've just been told the answer. What did Richie just say?
The Sovereign's Orb.
So thanks very much, everyone, for checking out episode 17. We hope that you like the changes that we made. I appreciate that there was quite a chunky segment around the Grand Tournament Finals. That probably isn't going to be exactly how we want to sort of do things moving forwards. The idea is to try and mix it up and involve more people and actually kind of have more interesting segments where people kind of bring different topics to the table, as well as sort of news and other broader information. So we're trying to, test out and try new things to make it more interesting. But as I say, thank you very much for listening to episode 17 of the Lookout Sir 40K podcast. Huge thanks to Rich for preparing that quiz. I thought that was amazing. Thanks very much, buddy.
Was my pleasure. I'll do it for the next time as well.
Well, exactly, man. Looking forward to it. It's be good as.
Well, now there's stuff to live up to. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, no, indeed, mate, indeed. But you did a good job. I think that was a good start. I'm really excited to see what people think of it. And then, obviously, thanks to Joe and Phil. That was really cool, guys. Good episode, I think. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it's been good fun.
There you go. So, with all that said and done, that will now conclude the Lookout Sir 40K podcast, episode 17. Thanks very much for checking us out, guys. Look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.